I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Would you all please stand and join us in the flag salute? Salute, pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're here at our regular meeting of February 12th, 2019. And I'd like to start off with report out, or actually, I think we have a motion on our closed session matter, C2A, student matter pursuant to Education Code Section 48918A, student case number 1617013. Is there a motion?
I move that student 1617013 has had their orders of expulsion terminated, and they and their parents' guardians have requested that the records of their respective board-assigned expulsion orders be expunged.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of our last meeting of January 22nd, 2019. Can I get a motion?
Aren't we supposed to be doing the flag salute? Oh, we did?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oof, I'm losing my mind already. Sorry. Any comments on the minutes? Is that what we're looking at?
I need a motion first.
I move to approve the minutes.
All right. Can I get a second?
A second.
Is there a comment?
Yes, I'd just like to discuss item number G3, which is on the previous minutes.
I don't think we want to discuss it. Is there something you want to amend?
Well, it's exactly the same thing that's on the agenda for tonight. And it was already a motion that failed. So I believe there might be a mistake.
No, actually, in order, it was a 2-1 vote, so we have to re-vote it because there was not a majority.
Doesn't that just mean it failed? It
No.
failed.
No, we did. No, we're taking another vote tonight.
So basically, anytime that something fails, we can bring it back to the next vote and
Sure.
just re-vote on it?
Sure. When we have a full board, only 3 members were at that board meeting.
I have a question. Shouldn't that been tabled? I wasn't here, but
Yeah, I suggested that it be tabled for the following meeting. It was insistent that we have a vote. The vote then failed.
Right, but I did not know the vote was going to fail. I have no idea what the vote's going to be until it was taken. So that's why we didn't table it, because there was a possibility it would pass. It didn't pass, so now we bring it back because now we have a full 5-member board and we'll re-vote it.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the minutes. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say
Aye.
aye.
I
Okay. Move on to the so on the agenda and consent agenda. I'd like to move item I1 to immediately follow E1. That's the only change I'd have there.
I'd like to take off item G3. I feel like we've already, never in the history that since I've been here have we looked at something, the exact same things, two meetings following each other, especially when one failed. We usually just move on. So that came to a vote. The vote failed, and it's time to move on. So it's really unclear to me why we are bringing that to a vote
We're
again.
not going to remove an item. So
is there something written?
So just the procedure is whenever one of us doesn't like the outcome of a vote, we can just ask that it be added to the next meeting? Is that what happens? Like if we vote on something and the outcome is not what I would have liked, then I can ask for it to be added to the next agenda and we can just keep voting on it. Is that how it works?
no, it's not how.
Okay.
Well,
Then if something failed, it generally fails and we move on.
It failed as a result of not having enough board members here.
let's
No,
say
it
that-
actually failed because there wasn't a majority voting in favor of the item.
No, there was a
So-
majority. It just wasn't. It wasn't.
There wasn't right, but it failed because there weren't enough
that's-
votes to pass
That's
it.
different than
Yes.
failing outright. It did not pass the muster for the particular code. So I don't think this is really the time to discuss this, Maureen.
I just think it should be taken off because it was not. It's not proper to me to vote on something and have it not pass and then just have it added to the next agenda.
Because
That's not proper.
let's say that the same scenario actually repeated today.
No, it won't because there's 5 members here
Oh, no,
today.
but-
Right, but if something failed, like 3
that-
people
No,
voted
no,
against it.
It's a different context.
It's a completely different scenario.
Well, but if there's only 3 people, it needs a majority to pass. It didn't have a majority to pass.
This also
So-
was not the last meeting. This was, what, 3 meetings ago?
No,
I was
No,
it
no,
was
it
at
was
the
last
last meeting.
meeting.
You weren't here.
I was here at
No.
the last meeting. The one I missed, I listened to in the car.
Okay, the meeting that was only 3
Let-
people,
let's-
You
So-
were,
so-
you were not here.
which is the
Okay.
minutes that we're covering
We
today.
have
we were not here.
we have a
You were not here,
motion.
But it was not last week.
No,
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 the
that
last
meeting.
meeting,
Okay.
the last
Okay.
meeting you were
Okay.
not at.
So let's discontinue this discussion. We have a motion. Do we have a motion?
No, we don't actually have a
Okay,
motion.
can I get a motion for the to approve the agenda and consent agenda?
I move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Okay. Discussion.
I believe that we should take off G3. It sets a terrible precedent. We voted on it. The vote, due to whether it was because of there were lack of people here or whatever, it didn't have the votes it needed to pass. If you look at the minutes, it says the measure failed. And so therefore, I think it's a terrible precedent to say, oh, we're going to just keep trying to push something through until it passes. I mean, it could have been brought up in a different way. There could have been new information added. It could have been a completely new item, but it's even the same item number. So it's exactly the same as before. It already failed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All those in favor of approving the agenda and consent agenda, this is a roll call.
Andy?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Rogelio?
Nay.
Maureen?
Nay.
I'm aye.
Okay. Passes 3-2. Alrighty. Move on to the student representative report. I'd like to introduce our new student representative, Mariana Camposano. And Mariana's a senior at the high school. She's participating in Virtual Enterprise, Spanish Club, and she's on the track team and the basketball team. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. And Carpinteria High School received a 6-year accreditation through 2025. We received the highest recommendation from our visiting team, as well as many accolades for the work we have done. We look forward to building on this success and continuing to work on our goals. Congratulations, Carpinteria High School. Congratulations to Delia Dominguez Lopez and Jasmine Gutierrez Santillan for winning 2nd and 3rd place in the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Essay and Poetry Contest. The new classrooms are ready, and we will be having classes in them beginning February 19, 2019. New furniture has been delivered, and teachers will begin to move in this week. Our athletic teams are busy this week in CIF playoffs. Tonight, boys basketball is playing Vistamar School in North Torrance, and tomorrow, girls water polo plays Flintridge Prep in Pasadena. Good luck, Warriors! And spring sports are underway. Please visit our website and download the app for update schedules. And that's it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. I'd like to move on to item I1, the annual report to the Board of Trustees prepared by the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And we have Mary Beth Carty here to give us a presentation. Welcome.
Oh, we don't have to even go through it. I'm just gonna.
Oh, you want to go? This is
Thank you, Bunka. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for accommodating me on this agenda. I appreciate that. I'm off to my book club meeting because we know how important reading at least 30 minutes a day is for everyone, young and old. On behalf of the Carpinteria Unified School District Citizen Bond Oversight Committee, it's my pleasure as chairperson to present the committee's 2018 annual report. There are copies here. We have a PDF there. Actually, I'm not going to go through it all because, as I said, it's available to you here. As you may recall, very briefly, November 2014, Carpinteria voters passed Measure U by over 66% and authorized up to $90 million in bonds to address the district's facility, infrastructure, and technology needs. In accordance with Prop 39, an independent oversight committee was established and representing very specific identified interests. At the March 10th, 2015 meeting, the Carpinteria Unified School District Governing Board reviewed applications and selected the following to serve on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, or CBOC. Aaron Lend, representing taxpayers; Christy Cooney, who serves as vice chair and is the parent or PTA representative; Clyde Freeman was a business representative; Wally Burquez, community at large; Paul Foley, senior citizen representative; Paul Patine, community at large; and Mary Beth Carty, also representing the community at large. In 2017, Sally Green and Denver Compton applied and were appointed by your board. And then in 2018, Gary Blair was appointed, and Sally Green subsequently resigned to assume her position as a trustee. We just received the news that Paul Foley is also resigning. So now the committee is charged with verifying to the best of its knowledge that bond revenues have been expended only for the purposes so described in Measure U. Over a total of 15 meetings since first convening in 2015, the committee's been provided detailed information by the district's management and staff concerning Measure U progress and expenditures, including the most recent financial reports, updated project expenditure summaries, general project construction updates, and communications plans related to the various projects identified in the 2014 Measure U bond. The committee has reviewed the 2018 report for both financial and performance audits for the Measure U bond fund, the certified public accountant firm of Moss Levy and Hartzheim has affirmed that the funds were properly accounted for and utilized in a project-based expense manner only. I'd like to acknowledge the thoughtful and active participation of all of our CBOC members and the diligent work of the district staff and project management team. That includes Cindy Abbott, who serves as our facilities coordinator; David Weniger, director of facilities; Lena Placencia, planning specialist; and Beverly Rodriguez, the accounting technician. The agendas, minutes, and all reports for this Measure U Citizens Bond Oversight Committee meetings, including this one, are posted online. We're thrilled with the completed status of the Gen 7 modular classrooms at Canalino and Carp High, the new entry gates and the NPR roof replacement at Aliso, and progress on the high school computer lab and science wing, among many, many other projects that are in the works. If you have further interest, you can go to the Measure U website, which is available in both English and in Spanish, and it's at carpmeasureu.com. If you have questions about any of the specific audit components, Cindy Abbott is not here to respond to those, but David Weniger is for technical questions. And just want to, again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share the results of this audit and remind everyone that Measure U is an important investment in our schools, and it ultimately invests in our students. So deep thanks to the voters who made these improvements possible and for your trust and confidence in the process of responsibly expending these funds.
Great.
Any
Thank you.
questions?
Yes. I'm so impressed by the many hours that these volunteers have put in on this independent oversight committee, and clearly so much work was done. I'm just curious, because these oversight committees have a really wonderful and distinctive task, which is to allow the community to continue to have a role in shaping the way these bond measure monies are spent throughout the state. What are the recommendations that were taken up by our district from that oversight committee?
The actual task of the Oversight Committee is to guarantee that the funds were expended in the original manner in which the General Facilities Plan was created, that the voters voted on. So our oversight is not so much as how the monies should be spent, but rather that they're spent in the correct manner, that no funds would be devoted to salaries, for instance, And we receive the financial records with that in mind. We understand that that's our function, rather than to shape the nature of projects.
It just says that it's an independent oversight committee,
Mhm.
and in looking into those, they do sometimes have more of a advisory role. And it doesn't seem like ours has. It seems like ours has been more of a sort of just listening body. And I think I think that may have been why we've gotten some resignations, because I think people really understood that to be more of a, people expected and have been, these committees are set up for it to be a collaborative process. And I was just wondering, it doesn't sound like ours was at all.
I think I would respectfully disagree that it wasn't collaborative. I think that a lot of time was devoted to the legal implications of joining this independent body. And it's independent in the sense that all of the members that I identified are clearly representing a segment of the population. For example, senior citizens are represented, taxpayers are represented, parents or PTA reps, business, and community at large. We went over the functions and reviewed the bylaws upon accepting the appointment, and it was very clear that we could ask a lot of questions about the nature of the projects and that we were invited to visit the projects. All of our questions are always answered, and if they're not, the question continues until it's answered sufficiently and adequately. But our function as an independent oversight committee is not to tell the facilities managers or to change the nature of the project. And I think that's what you're asking.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just saying that, for instance, if the job of the committee is just to show up and receive financial data, it's no different than what happens at a board meeting. And the purpose of gathering together these people from very different communities on their own volunteer time, seems to me the real benefit of that would have been to get some input, questions, viewpoints that we don't have and that the district may not have, right? So you're getting a sort of...
and I think we do definitely have that. Our meetings are not just sitting, nodding, and rubber stamping. We have a lot of really great discussion, actually, when it comes to projects themselves. The site committees were charged with kind of thought partnership, and they were asked, each individual site had a separate committee before the funds were expanded to help co-create kind of, and their input was taken under consideration. I think that the job, the volunteer position that we are in is really to respond to the information we're given, to ask those important questions, and we're able to shape the way that we receive the information. There's a lot of back and forth, and I think communication is fairly open. The train has left the station in terms of what projects are going to be.
So how did the committee's questions shape any of the work that was being done? Was anyone able to ask anything that helped? Can you think of a concrete example of how a question that was brought forward, like these people spent time doing this, presumably the hope is that their time and effort, resulted in some benefit to everybody. Can you think of a concrete example where that happened?
Where a question changed the sort of trajectory of a site-based project?
I mean, if you think of getting this
like
volunteer
the MMR
group,
roof or the
something, yeah. I mean, or perhaps just anything. I'm just thinking of these people's are volunteering their time. I don't think that they're doing it just to look at numbers, right? They're doing it to look at numbers with an eye on the larger community and a sense of ownership over the taxpayers, right? Because this isn't any one person's money. This is the taxpayers' money, right?
Clearly.
So all of us should have some feeling of ownership over how it's getting spent. And I guess I was just, anyways, I don't want to waste anyone's time, but it sounds like you can't think of a concrete example where any of these volunteers' work helped shape this process.
I would say that the questions asked by the members of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee were answered in a manner of that was satisfactory to the members that were there. And in terms of a concrete example of it changing, I would say it's more an example of, like, for example, the teacher's technology package. We had questions about how the TVs were installed in classrooms. And that actually did change the way some of the subsequent installations occurred. But that was a matter that didn't change the actual purchase. It didn't change the package itself. It was more, hey, I have an idea. Maybe, I heard from this teacher it would be more beneficial to have, those smart boards installed at this level than that, and it was taken under consideration. That's probably not the best example. That's all I can think of at the moment, though.
Also, Mary, I have a comment or a question. Like, for example, the committee, you and the committee have asked the financials or the expenses or questioned those expenses of Measure U
Yes.
money. Like, hold on, I look like this is kind of expensive or something like that.
Yeah, we'll look at a figure and we'll say, now tell me what constituted
Or
that
for example,
figure. Take it
let's
apart.
say, like, if I ask you, okay, are we in track to finish every project by 2022? I mean, with the 90 million bond, the state aid.
With additional state aid.
Correct. And are we on track, let's say, right on
We're on
schedule?
track
Are
for
we
now.
behind or?
Well, I have to tell you, Rogelio, my husband's a contractor, so I know projects work. And school finance and school bonds are another animal. And honestly, the Department of State Architecture is absolutely glacial in its pace. Things take a really long time. So if there's a variance in the budget, perhaps, it would be due to the way that the expenditure is expressed and the timing of the project. So timing is everything. Are we on track? Man, I sure hope so. There's tremendous levels of oversight, ours being just one. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I got my property tax, and I'm still paying for that 1995 school.
Oh, if you're asking if the property tax will be done in 2022?
No.
That's
I'm just went through it, and that 1995 school bond, I'm still charged, I think,
few bucks.
$42 or something. So the current school bond actually probably, I don't know, but maybe I'll pass away before you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand.
Well,
That's why I understand.
It's
That's why
designed to be paid back
correct.
over 30 years.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So that's
That
that's
part.
why it's a concern. It's
Yeah.
it's not just
If there was another way to get these facilities accomplished, I think we would have explored that path vehemently. It's not easy to pass a bond, and you'll see that many school bond measures fail. And there are other communities similar to ours that didn't see the merit in passing a school bond. If we could do enough bake sales or candy sales or wrapping paper sales to address these really expensive and unwieldy facilities projects, we probably would have approached it that way. But I'm sorry, I think that's through no fault of anyone's. It's costly.
Yeah. Because my concern is
And
that
complicated.
we will not be able for another school bond.
Forward.
I don't know in how long. So I think that we should
Yeah.
take good care of
And
this.
one
this
failed in the
bond.
meantime. A supermajority wasn't achieved for a bond in the 90s. I remember my father-in-law was superintendent. He was trying his hardest, but it required a supermajority, and it failed. So, yeah, our schools... And the invitation is out there for people to come and look. And if you haven't seen the Gen 7, it's amazing. It's an amazing structure, and it's energy efficient, beautiful, and it's really conducive to learning. And the kids that get to use those classrooms and the teachers that are teaching them, I think, are really grateful. So again, we thank taxpayers, and we thank them especially when property taxes are due, because it stings. But thanks for that investment.
Thank you, Mary.
Right.
I think my last point is just related to this, which is that it takes so much energy for people to volunteer to do anything involved with the schools if they don't have children in the schools. I would like to see us really use their energy in a much more concrete and collaborative fashion rather than just offering them spreadsheets, which honestly they could get coming to any board meeting related to Measure U. I would like to see it much more of I would like to see us allow some room for the community's questions and comments and thoughts to have some shaping of the process. And I know that, may not be possible in a large way, but I do believe that more voices would make this project stronger. And it doesn't need to be such a closed process. It can be more collaborative, and I would like to see that.
So yeah, that all took place prior to the master plan, and there was tremendous community input. I think we covered this at our last meeting, maybe at our board study.
I'm actually just speaking specifically to the independent oversight committee's job.
Right.
Yeah, but
It's not a job of a master
that's not
plan.
their purview.
They're
So
not a building committee.
I think I'm being misunderstood here. So just to clarify, there are many ways to run a community committee. There are many ways to involve a community committee. And I understand that this is an independent oversight committee. It's it's established by Section 15278 of the California Education Code. I went ahead and read that. And my understanding of what that committee is charged with and what our committee is participating in, the committee seems to me to not be, it doesn't seem like it's being allowed to fully extend its kind of wings and do what some independent oversight committees have been allowed to do. So I would like to see that more moving forward.
Well, you would be welcome to attend a meeting if you would ever like to do that. I don't think you've ever attended a meeting, but I understand your consideration of more thought partnership, and that's not within my purview as chair, nor is it within the circumscribed task of the committee. But, as I said, there's public comment available for people that want to come.
It's very prescribed by law. I mean, if you have a bond, you have an oversight committee. I sat on the Santa Barbara City College Oversight Committee for 6 years, and it worked exactly like the one you have, Mary Beth, is working.
There's not a lot we can
really
do
is
about
not a
how
lot
it's
of input from the
implemented.
public. That all took place before the election to pass the bond.
I mean the committee members having input. And although I didn't attend one and would have liked to and may in the future, my dad did just resign from it, and we talk every day. So I did hear about quite a few of the committees. I heard about his concerns. I heard about, and I don't want to speak for him, but I heard about his concerns, and he left the committee. So we don't know why that happened exactly. He's not here to tell us. But I think ultimately, I work with volunteers all the time, and there's a way to, there's. I just believe that it's possible that there's a missed opportunity. That's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. So can I get a motion to approve this report?
I'll motion to approve the report.
I second the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Okay, we'll move on to back to our schedule here and E2 recognitions. Diana.
Thank you. So I'd like to begin with Carpinteria High School. Principal Corneo would like to recognize David Pennington. He's our after-school program specialist and his staff at the after-school program. Over 100 students participate daily in Step Up by receiving tutoring services, participating in workshops, and they also participate in MESA, which is Mathematics, Engineering, and Science Achievement. And then on behalf of Rincon and Principal Gloger, he'd like to recognize Emmanuel Capuzano, who's the instructional assistant at Rincon High School, for all the ways he helps students and staff at Rincon. For the past year, Emmanuel has been providing academic support, supervision, and he's been great encouragement and support for all the Rincon students as well as their staff. At the middle school, Principal O'Shea would like to recognize 8th grade math teacher Janelle Ellis for her tireless work in preparing students for success in the rigorous high school math classes. And then at Catalino and Family School, Principal Pursoon would like to thank Carpinteria Education Foundation and specifically Mac Brown Excavation for the wonderful weekly art lessons the students have been receiving all year. Currently, students are beginning theater arts in the upper grades and visual arts in the lower grades, and they've completed 18 sessions of dance and choral music in the first semester.
Fantastic.
And then at Aliso, Principal Fox would like to recognize Julie Hathaway. She's the lead cafeteria worker for her support to the students and staff at Aliso, and they really appreciate her positive attitude, the rapport with students, and the tasty food that she and her staff are providing students every day, especially the salad bar. And then at Summerlin, Principal Fox would also like to recognize Jennifer Rind, who's our accounting technician in the business office. She provides support, is always available to help, and she does it with a positive attitude. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Great. So I'm going to continue with the recognitions. Tonight, I'd like to acknowledge the outstanding work of Mari Hornback. She's our coordinator of assessment and student information systems, as well as the elementary school office coordinators, Judy Holler at Summerlin, Chris Karpenko at Aliso, Letty Garcia at the Catalino and Family School, in welcoming and registering all the incoming TK and K families for fall of 2019. In addition, I'd like to recognize our school counselors. We're celebrating National Counseling Week. And at the high school, we have Darcy Campbell and Julie Bravo, Megan Kruk and Stephanie Stahl at the middle school, Shannon Mancera at Catalino and Family School, Renee Romero at Aliso and Summerlin, and Marlo Stoops at Rincon. They do a wonderful job of supporting our students in social emotional development. The next item that I want to share about is the Healthy Kids Survey from 2019. Every year, our students, parents, and staff respond to the Healthy Kids Survey. It is a comprehensive youth health risk and resilience data collection service. It's required by the State Department for grades 5, 7, 9, and 11, and it's funded by Tobacco Use Prevention Education Funds. We call it TUPE funds. It's designed to identify both areas of strength and areas of improvement as schools promote the well-being and positive social development of all students. As I mentioned, the student survey is paired with the parent survey and the school staff survey to provide key data on school climate and safety, learning supports and barriers, parent engagement, as well as social emotional development, health, and well-being of students. The survey results provide information to not only the leadership team, but all to the school sites as well, to guide school improvement efforts for our local control and accountability plans. So we use this information in developing our LCAP. And that's in the areas of enhancing school climate, student engagement, parent involvement, as well as addressing the needs of high-risk students. The sampling of the survey is based on the premise that at least 70% of students, staff, and parents will take the survey for valid representative data. So this year, for us in CUSD, only grades 5 and 7 students met the criteria for representativeness, which limits the ability for us to generalize the results of students in grades 9 and 11, as well as the results of parents and staff. However, we still can use the results to begin conversations at the school sites regarding the parents and staff input and the high school students. We had 503 students respond to survey questions in school engagement and supports, school safety, and mental and physical health. 115, or 40% of our staff, responded to survey questions in student learning environment, staff working environment, school safety, and student discipline, support, positive relationships, and student behavior. And 362 parents responded to survey questions in parental involvement, academic orientation and participation, respect and cultural sensitivity, student risk behavior, discipline, and facilities. So in the report and also on this video on the screen, the summary of key indicators from 2018-19 survey results are available for the past 3 years, and all of our full reports are posted on the district's website. The leadership team will work with staff, parents, and students to analyze and interpret this data, both district-wide and school-wide, and we'll use this data as an assessment of the students' social emotional development, their resilience, and health risk behaviors. We also compare the results to determine how consistent student, staff, and parent perceptions and experiences are. So we look at the students' results and compare them to both the parents and the staff. We also compare the results to statewide and statewide results. We compare school site results to district results, and that can provide us a context. And but what we're really interested in is what our students, staff, and parents report about our schools and their experiences. We also compare the 2019 results with 2018 and 2017, and that gives us an idea of any trend or changes in both behavior, attitude, as well as their perceptions. So here's just a brief highlight of some of the results. We had positive student results in 2019. So more than 90% of student respondents feel safe at school, feel connected to school, and experience high expectations by adults at school. Experiences of harassment and bullying, or spreading mean rumors or lies, or seeing a weapon on campus, those experiences have all declined since 2016. In addition, this is what's really important for us. Alcohol, drug, and tobacco consumption has declined for high schoolers, grades 9 and 11, since 2016. So that's all. That's good results. We have some specific areas of concern in 2019 data. Less than 85% of our student respondents reported that they're academically motivated and feel that they have meaningful participation in school, and that's declined. Students' perceptions of a clean and tidy school have also declined. More student respondents reported that they're afraid of being beaten up and have been in physical fights. That's grades 7 and 9. And what's really concerning to us is that since 2016, more student respondents report experience of chronic sadness and hopelessness, and 16% of our grade 7 students reported that they seriously considered suicide. So that's highly concerning to us, which is why we really focus on providing the counseling support, our START therapists, and we are continuing to write grants for more counseling support and develop partnerships with CALM and hospice to provide counseling for our students at the school site. Measure U is good news. So that's the good news. The Gen 7 classrooms at the high school are almost complete. We have new furniture, has all been delivered and installed. The CHS staff, they are packing, and we will move into the new classrooms the end of this week. So beginning next week after the President's holiday, students and teachers will be teaching and learning in our new Gen 7 science labs and computer labs. We're very excited. You all know that Catalino students and teachers are happy to be in their Gen 7 classrooms, and the middle school teachers and students report that they're satisfied with their Gen 7 classrooms. We are also planning the next phase of the Measure U projects based on the facilities master plan, and that is we're modernizing existing classrooms at Aliso, Catalino, and Carpinteria High School. And then during the summer, we'll begin construction. So we're trying to phase that in to accommodate the summer break. And then the Measure U team is working on coastal development permits for both Main School and Summerlin Elementary School. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Can we ask any questions at this point about the report?
Sure.
Are you going to be bringing back these results from the survey, or is this the last time we're going to see it?
No, what you'll see is in the LCAP and the student improvement plans, you'll see the results of the survey. So we'll bring them back, and we'll bring back our actions as a response to the analysis of the results. That will be in our LCAP in the spring.
Does the LCAP, will it reflect changes that may need to be made regarding the parent information, though?
Yes. Yes, there's parent involvement as one of the sections.
Because just looking at it, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 areas this year went down for the parents.
Right. One thing to keep in mind for the context is that the data it's not really representative, because we didn't have more, 70% of our parents respond. But yes, that will be a trend that we'll look at. Specifically, what we'll do is we'll drill down to the school sites. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is for each school site, both the principals, all the principals will be working with their school site council and their parent group to respond to the parent results for their particular school sites. And you'll see the analysis of those responses in the school improvement plans, and then that will be reflected in the LCAP.
So we'll have a chance to really drill down on these reports
Yes.
at that time.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the improvements that get discussed, because honestly, there's some really shocking news and areas where even if we did see slight improvement from last year, it's not. I'm just looking at like meaningful participation in schools. In school, it's at 64% of students feel like they're having meaningful participation, 46% in grade 7, 70% in grade 11, and that went up 9 points. So that's even an improvement, but it's still pretty dire. So,
And you're
anyways,
referring to the parents?
no, this is on the.
Are you referring to students or
this
parents?
is the student survey.
Students.
Yeah, grade 11, 70% said they feel meaningful participation in schools. 64% of grade 9 for this year. 46% in grade 7 feel like they're having meaningful participation in school. So this, in combination with our overall 15-point drop in school scores, it's really
highly
raising
concerning, yes.
raising massive alarm bells.
Yes, of course. And that's why the school site will be responding to it.
And also, this statistics, like being afraid of being beaten up, grade 7, 17%, grade then 18%, 23%. That's not good. And then a student survey, students being in a physical fight, 14%, 28%, 22%. Students who have seen a weapon on campus, 23%, 16%, 16%.
Yes, so that shows that it was 23%. 3 years ago, it's declined to 16%. That's still not acceptable, but it's going in the right direction.
And then the student survey, school is usually clean. Grade 7, 68%, 68%, 56%. I think that's like a.
Yeah, I think
But,
Diana, I think Diana said that was an area of concern for
Yes,
her. Yeah.
that's a C, I think.
Well, and this Healthy Kids survey is one of the few metrics that we have kind of available to really assess how our campuses and how our students are doing, and I'm just really, really concerned about it. Really concerned, and kind of as our superintendent, I'm pleading with you to make some significant changes, because this is not acceptable.
Right. We'll move on. Thank you, Diana.
Yes.
We'll move on to item E4. We have a presentation on our special education program. And we have Kirsten Escobedo here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I don't know. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here to talk to you about our special education department here in Carpinteria Unified School District. All right, so to start with some numbers, we serve students here from ages 3 to 22, including preschool, TK to grade 12, and also our students who are transition age, 18 to 22. Currently, that's about 319 students, which is 15% of our total student enrollment, and there it shows you that the statewide average is about 11%. Some more numbers. This is currently the number of students at each school site or in the programs who have IEPs, and that's any type of IEP. We're currently serving 11 students outside of programs in Carpinteria Unified School District, and that includes students from kindergarten all the way up through our transition age of a range of disabilities, deaf and hard of hearing, emotionally disturbed, with more moderate severe needs. And the reason for the programs outside of our district is because they have a higher level of need that we are not able to provide here in Carpinteria. due to our size primarily. Looks like we have a little bit of a formatting issue here. I apologize for that. There are 13 different eligibility criteria for special ed. They're all listed here. And currently we do have students represented by every one of those eligibility criteria. A couple slides going forward, you'll see a percentage of how it breaks down more specifically. So this is a 5-year financial history, including our current year. As you can see, special education has always been an unfunded mandate, unfortunately. And you can see what our revenues have been over the last few years and what our current expenditures are. And just briefly, I think the reason for the increase in the expenditures is we are seeing more students that have higher levels of need across the board. Particularly, there has been, I would say, a hugely significant increase in our students with social emotional needs over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, and that's not just here in our district, but that is statewide. And so, in addition to social emotional and mental health needs, we are seeing students that have more significant medical needs and cognitive needs, and so that takes a higher level of support to serve them successfully as well. Here are the percentages based on the eligibility criteria, and you can see that primarily speech and language impairment and specific learning disability are our two biggest categories of eligibility. Between those two, they make up about 50% of our students with IEPs, and then it breaks it down otherwise into the other eligibility criteria. I'm going to talk with you briefly about the assessment process for special education and the role of the IEP team, and just give you a little bit of an overview. So our first goal is always to try to meet the students' needs in general education with interventions as appropriate, and those would be implemented by the classroom teacher. If we see that a student is not making progress at an expected rate, typically a student study team meeting would be called, some interventions would be planned, and then those would be implemented. The student study team would then come back to the table and look at how those interventions are going. Is the student making progress? And it could be academically, socially, emotionally, any number of ways. If the student study team is still not seeing the progress that they had hoped, they would consider assessment and propose assessment at that point. A parent can also request that their child be assessed for special education, and so that is something that could happen at any point in this process. Once the team agrees to develop an assessment plan is put together. The parent agrees to that in writing, and once that's done, the team completes it, and then an IEP team meeting is held to determine if the child is indeed eligible for special ed services. And these are the IEP team members. The parent is, the most important person of the team on the team, because they have input to the child that we don't see necessarily in the school setting. Also, the local education agency representative, which is typically the school site principal or assistant principal. Also a special education teacher, the general education teacher, and then if the student was assessed in another area, like speech or occupational therapy, then you would have one of those related service providers listed be part of the assessment team and IEP team as well. And their role specifically is to review the results of the assessments that were done and determine if the child meets one of those 13 eligibility criteria. If the child does, then that team develops goals based on the needs that come out in that assessment process. And then based on those goals, the team looks at what services are appropriate to meet those needs and what placement should the team consider in order to enable the child to make progress. 3 other things that are really important to highlight as part of the IEP process is the team has to consider what is the least restrictive environment. And what that means is, what is the environment that most closely represents general education in which the child can be educated and still make progress. So for some students, depending on their need, LRE might be the general ed class with a little bit of push-in support from a speech therapist or a special ed teacher. For other students who have very, very, very high levels of need, the least restrictive environment might be a special program, or it might be a non-public school. So LRE varies very differently for each individual child and what their needs are. They also have to, the IEP team is also charged with determining what is a free appropriate public education, and we love acronyms, so we make FAPE, that is the acronym that you will hear associated with that. And the key word there is really what is appropriate. What is appropriate for the student to make progress on those goals and make progress enough that we are seeing improvements over time. And then the other thing that's very, very important for us to consider is the parent input into the whole process. And there is a particular piece of the IEP that asks the parent to answer the question if they feel like their input was considered and they had the opportunity to give their opinion and perspective. This is an overview of the number of staff that we have in our district who serve students with IEPs. Just some clarification here, the teachers, psychologists, and speech and language pathologist columns are FTEs, and then the IAs, which are our instructional assistants, are number of IA positions at each school site. And most of those IA positions are the full length of the school day. There are a couple exceptions to those, but that generally shows you what our staffing is, and it's allocated across the district at each site or program. These are other staff within our district who are serving our students besides the teachers and the speech therapists. With the exception of the top two, the APE teacher and the credentialed school nurse, the rest of those are either contractors or employed by other districts and part of regional programs, which means they serve a variety of students throughout the county. Or we have specifically contracted with them to meet our students' needs. And two examples of that are our physical therapist and our mental health therapist that is specific to students with IEPs. All right, and here are just a few highlighted strengths of our special ed program. We really are very fortunate in this district because we do have teachers and providers whose primary focus is on the needs of the students and working with them to see them make progress. They are also very, very good at collaborating with our general ed teachers, and the general ed teachers often will come up with wonderful suggestions about how we can modify and accommodate the curriculum in the general ed class. Their input in IEPs is extremely important. We also have the opportunity now to meet with our instructional assistants not only once a month as a district group, which are meetings that I attend, and they also have the opportunity to meet weekly at their school sites with case managers and others as necessary. Our staff attends a lot of professional development that's available through the SELPA. And we also in this district have very strong collaboration with families, and that really is due to the hard work of our teams on the ground doing the frontline work, you know, the teachers and the providers who are working with them and communicating with them on a regular basis. And then another real asset here is that we do have strong site administrative support for our special ed programs. So our principals and assistant principals are really take ownership of those programs and work with our families to see that the children are successful. All right, so to share a little bit of what we're going forward and what areas where we need to continue to work, the next 3 slides have CASP data, which is our state testing data. 5th grade is this slide, and you'll see that it's the results in English language arts and math over the last 3 years. So there's 4 standards that are represented here. Blue was the standard exceeded, orange was the standard met, and gray was the standard nearly met, and yellow was if the standard was not met. And those numbers there are percentages of students with disabilities and where they performed on each of those tests over the course of the years. So this is 5th grade. The next slide is 8th grade. And the next slide is 11th grade. And these are generally consistent with patterns we're seeing across the state. And so this is something that we are continuing to take a look at, not only within district, but also countywide and statewide. And just a brief overview of some of the improvement efforts that we have put in place and are continuing to implement. At the elementary level, we are ensuring students with IEPs have access to general education interventions. So before pulling them out and having them work with a special ed teacher, we want to make sure they might have access to a reading specialist or some other intervention program that's available. Additionally, for both elementary and secondary, we want to ensure that students who are receiving a diploma have core curriculum instruction from someone credentialed in that area. And then we're providing ongoing professional development for our staff. We have a co-teaching model right now, which is a general ed teacher or a special ed teacher pushes into a general ed class and works collaboratively with that teacher to co-plan, co-teach, and co-assess. And that's happening currently at the middle school. And one of our goals next year is to expand that to high school. And we also are in the process of beginning differentiated assistance with the county ed office. So that was very, very quick overview. What questions might you have?
I'm just, maybe it's just an observation that the 8th grade seems to have a pretty significant improvement in both in reading language and also in math. Mm-hmm. Did we make some program changes there, or is that just the population?
I think that it is due to some of the program changes. We have really, made sure we've looked at all of our students when they do the master schedule, when the sites do the master schedule, and looked at what their needs are in English, language arts, and math, and really made a determination of can they be served in the general education classroom, even if they have a math goal with some support maybe through the Learning Center model. And so the teams there have done have really taken a look at that and tried to make sure that students are appropriately placed, I think, which is part of that. And then we do have a co-teaching model there that has been started. So I think that's part of the reason that we're seeing that.
It's working.
That encourages.
So congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing, and also, unless I had always been under the impression that gifted and talented was also under the auspices of special education. Is that the case?
Not in California.
Oh, not in California.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, some states do consider gifted and talented students to be part of their special education program, but we do not in this state. However, certainly students who are gifted and talented do have their own unique needs, which are addressed through that program. They just don't have an IEP the way that our students that meet one of those eligibility criteria might. Now, having said that, occasionally there are students who meet both, who would qualify as a GATE student,
Absolutely.
who would also have a disability and be eligible for an IEP. That does happen.
And then it seems like the two competing and equally challenging pressures on any special education department are budgetary and also, increasing population. Mm-hmm. With those two things in mind, do you think our district is doing a good enough job of exploring kind of evidence-based programs that give us kind of the best bang for our buck? Or do you have any, as we're beginning our budget process as we are right now, do you think that we're doing what we need to do in order to be realistic about those costs, and how can we start to wrap our hands around that, or maybe it's just, anyways, I'd love to hear what your thoughts on that.
Great question. So I am a believer in just reflective practice across the board, and so I think our approach should always be, okay, what's working, what are we doing well, and what can we do better, right? And so one of the things that we've taken a look at since I've been here is our programs for students with moderate to severe disabilities, and expanding those programs and making sure that their needs are being met. And so we have made some specific investments in curriculum for those programs because those are typically students who are not earning a high school diploma, and so they have more functional skills needs. Then we have our students who are earning a high school diploma, who we saw the data, right, of where they are. It's a snapshot into some of their needs right now. So that's our area of continued growth, right? And as I mentioned, I think we really need to look at, are there students who are being served in maybe a special ed setting right now who could be more appropriately served in, say, a general ed math class with someone who is, has that credential, and could they be successful there with additional supports, right? Different, maybe some assistive technology. We also are, through some programs that we're required to do by the state, some compliance programs, we're looking at what are some curriculum or other aspects that we could add. And so we have a committee right now that's working on that. And one of the things that we'll be looking at is what were the recommendations that the WASC team made at the high school, and aligning with those, as well as what are we already doing in our LCAP that we can continue to expand for our students with disabilities.
Well, and I think you always want to do your best for the students, and at the same time, we don't have an infinite reserve of money.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, how are districts working with that? How are they, what's the process for figuring out, the programs that are working successfully, or where to invest more, or how to, the monetary piece. And maybe there is no answer really to that. But the secondary piece I would say is, because Catalino, I'm noticing, and just from my experience of being over there, is having such a large population at it. My hope is that the Measure U team is really looking at that and using that. I know right now, like one of the bathrooms, whenever I walk into campus every morning, there's I know there's just different bathroom situations for some of our students.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope that those needs are and all the needs that are being encountered are being taken into consideration as we have this kind of windfall of money. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
is the special ed team being consulted readily for those changes at Catalino? Are they consulting with you about changes that, or do you have any say on that?
Well, the way that I would answer that is that special ed it's an individualized program,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have to make sure that the students' individual needs are being met,
Right.
and are we addressing their disability? So in terms of how that relates to Measure U, and specifically to the restroom question that you asked, the ADA piece of that is something that's being addressed to make sure that we're meeting ADA requirements. So that would be one way that I would answer that question.
But even it seems to me, even beyond just like an ADA situation, are there, anyways, not to get too detailed into this, but I just think we have to think long term, and we have to think of not just the needs that are being addressed, but potential future needs for the bathroom situations that our students are handling.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you, Kirsten.
Okay,
That's
you're
great.
welcome. Thank you.
Before Kirsten sits down, I'd just like again to acknowledge her skillful leadership of a very challenging program. As a special ed director, Kirsten really focuses on each and every student and their family and serves them very well. In our business and education, special ed is highly litigious. And our district, instead of being litigious, develops relationships with families and parents that serve them well the whole time that they're in our schools, and that's because of Kirsten's leadership. So we really thank you, Kirsten, for your excellent leadership for the most vulnerable families and students in our district. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I just would like to say thank you to the staff who really are out there every day doing the hard work, building the relationships, and we're very appreciative of them as well. So thank you.
Great,
All
thank
right.
you.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to, do we have any comment, Monica?
We have three.
Okay.
One of them is not on the agenda, two of them, and one is.
Okay, but
just-
we'll just do the two not on the agenda. Which agenda item are they?
One is for item G4, so we have that in the agenda.
Okay,
And the other one, maybe they can explain when they go, or they're not on the agenda.
okay, great.
So, Holly Minier, if you can please come up.
Good evening, CUSD board members and Superintendent Rigby. I'm here to speak to you this evening about comments made regarding the Measure U update during your January 22nd, 2019 meeting. I was here. Namely, there was discussion about reorganizing the priorities of Measure U spending and holding town hall meetings to discuss the progress of Measure U. I was concerned by those comments as there were many hours of thought and work put into the Measure U plans and priorities. Specifically, there were school site council meetings led by consultant Pat Foley, starting in 2013, where parents and staff members shared their priorities for site improvements. Parents volunteered, as did teachers and classified staff, to share their thoughts about how to improve the facilities at each school site. And these were done by each school site, and I was on 2 of them. After the school site meetings with consultant Foley, she prepared a report summarizing the facility needs as outlined by each site team. This information is part of the facilities master plan, which is listed on the Measure U website, as Mrs. Carty referenced earlier this evening. Next, there was a superintendent's council comprised of various community and CUSD staff members. In preparation for the election, where Measure U would be considered by the voters, data was collected from voters regarding which site improvements would be valued the most by the community members and how much the community would support via a bond measure. After many groups of people volunteered their time to call Carpinteria and Summerlin residents to ask for their support of Measure U, and we stood on highly trafficked street corners, Measure U, thankfully, passed. After Measure U passed, there were additional planning meetings at each school site with their respective architects to describe facility improvement priorities within each site. These individual site meetings included school team members, both certificated and classified, sharing their input. Again, this was on a volunteer basis and included many hours of time and thought. After the sites prioritized their ideas for site improvements, the Board of Trustees held board meetings where they had the difficult task of prioritizing projects based on each team's input. The Board of Trustees decided on those priorities, which then started the process of construction, which thankfully we are in now. My specific concerns, which brought me here this evening, include hearing Trustee Foley ask to reprioritize Measure U projects. The thought of reprioritizing is very disrespectful toward the time, work, and effort those individuals I mentioned participated in those hours of planning meetings over many years. As a result, I'd like to encourage all of our trustees to review the facilities master plan instead of recommending new changes to Measure U projects. To add and to address the town hall meeting idea, community members, like me tonight, have the opportunity to share their comments, concerns, and questions during board meetings. They can also express their thoughts and suggestions via email to CUSD staff and to board members. I found CUSD staff members responsive to questions when I've asked. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Jamie Dimon.
Good evening. I'm here to talk for a less than happy reason. I'm very, well, I'll just start. I've watched hours upon hours of board meetings from home. From my TV, I record the meetings because I can't always be here. I have 3 kids. We have sports. I own my own business. It's just our season of life. I can't always be here. And the last couple things I've watched have been really disturbing, particularly with several board members. I'm baffled by the comments by Mr. Delgado, that you don't want it to be here anymore so that it can be televised for public access. You don't feel that people watch it. You feel it's a waste of time and effort, I guess. But believe it or not, many people watch it. They don't necessarily watch the YouTube, so you can't track the viewers, but they actually watch it like I do on the public access channel. They record it like I do, so we can watch it at a time that better suits us and gives it the time and thought that it deserves. And that way, everybody in our community can participate because people do have other jobs, they have families, and they can't always be here and be present. So the fact that you want to limit our public's access to these meetings is appalling. The next one is just, it's so frustrating. I watched the budget study session. In fact, I didn't even get through half of it yet. But the first half was so appalling, some of the comments that were made. I'm baffled that a board member would want to take $100,000 out of the budget for personal gain benefits while trying to cut $900,000 from the school's district, from the budget, from our students, from our kids. I think it's irresponsible even to suggest the thought, but I think it's absolutely reprehensible that you would push for something like that. I think it's offensive, your thoughts on the caliber of our current board members. I think it's disrespectful. I think it's disrespectful of anybody that's been in this seat before that hasn't done that, that hasn't taken the benefits. I know it's technically an option, but the fact that you want to push it at a time like right now is just, it's so rude. I don't have the words. It's infuriating. That's what it is. It's infuriating. The fact that you felt that it wasn't the right caliber of person running for this office is ridiculous because it's not, because they aren't getting incentivized. I think that's the exact opposite type of person that should be on this board. Nobody should be running to command this board, to command our district because of the benefits. I'm not sure if you're hearing me, Maureen. Okay. But I need to know that you understand. Yeah, thank you for the continued disrespect towards our community. But I think
excuse me, I'm not allowed to make comments.
I'm not asking you to comment.
And I'm taking notes.
Okay. I think it's incredibly disrespectful to the current board, and it's reprehensible that you think that somebody should do this for the benefits, because that's what you were suggesting. That is the wrong type of person for this job. The person that needs to be doing this job is doing it without personal gain, without for their own benefit, not for some political gain because they may want to have some future political agenda. I don't know. But the agendas that you and Rogelio have pushed on this board over the last 2 years is not the agenda of our children. And I'm not the only one that feels that. And I hope that you can fall in line and understand what is best for our students is not necessarily going to go with whatever it is that you're pushing. I don't know where some of your thoughts and ideas are coming from. It seems like you come into meetings completely unorganized, asking questions that could have been answered if you had read things ahead of time. Time is wasted in meetings with bickering, and I think the efficiency of our district and the success of our district, it doesn't feel like that is your leading point in your being here. So as a parent, those are my thoughts. I can only speak for myself, but at the same time, I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. Thank you.
Can I
Thank you.
have a comment?
Thank you.
No, you don't comment.
Fine.
Okay, who's the next
Not
one?
appropriate to respond.
No, it's not. It's just actually.
We can't respond to public comment
Okay, who's
because
next?
then it becomes a back and forth.
there another
So I think the next one had to do with the budget. So we can hear that now, or
Yeah, the next one is regarding item G4, so I don't know if you want to hear it now or after G4.
we could either way. If the person wants to leave, needs to go somewhere, they can.
Okay, it's Marianne Bartholomew.
Good evening. My name is Marianne Bartholomew, as was just stated, and I'm here to also debate the budget regarding benefits for the board. Somebody said tonight, these aren't the exact words, but do your best for the students with the money that you have. Well, if we're here as a board members to do with our money that is best for the children, it's not spending money for health benefits. the taxpayers should not be responsible for that, and that's why I'm here. We need to spend that money on programs that are more beneficial for our students. I know that there are many budget cuts that have to be coming along because of, as everything, prices go up, and I can understand some of the budget cuts, but to have budget cuts yet for the board members to have health benefits, to me, is totally unacceptable. And so I totally agree with the woman that just spoke regarding that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and I was going to say is that if you took this job to get benefits, or you took the job to be responsible and helpful to our children, then that's why you run for the school board, not for benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to G, business operations facilities and warrants. Being asked to approve warrants for the period of January 18th through the 7th of February in the amount of $1,840,801. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes, I was just wondering about, there's an item for $81,000 under furniture.
Can you tell me what page and what?
Sure. It's page 1.
$81,000. That is Measure U. That is
Right.
new classroom furniture.
Right. To my understanding, though, I don't remember approving a contract for Kruger International for that.
That's not a contract. Those are furniture supplies.
Right, but didn't we look at that last? We looked at it. We looked at the furniture. We approved furniture. Is that correct?
Yeah, and this is ongoing too. So we did the Gen 7s
K1.
at Catalino.
Yeah,
I just didn't recognize the name Kruger International.
It's also known as KI.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that was my only question.
A couple of questions. First page, January 24, 2019, Ernest Caius, Inspection Services, $8,930. Yes, one question. I thought it was $7,600 unless he worked overtime or some extra. I don't know.
He invoices twice a month.
I know, but it's $7,600.
He has a fixed price contract, though.
I thought it
He
was
actually,
by the hour.
his contract is by the hour.
Well, I'm guessing that he's charging for all of his hours now, and he probably wasn't before.
Mr. Delgado, perhaps we could request just a report of what Mr. Kais has, what we've paid him over the last, during his entirety of employment. It would be helpful just to see a report of that.
I think you've exhaustively asked this question for the last year and a half in regard to Mr. Kais.
And have I gotten a report of all the expenditures on him, which is part
You have.
not up to now. I have not.
So I'm guessing. I'm just speculating here, but I'm speculating that Mr. Kais was not charging us for all of his hours prior to.
But you are speculating.
I am speculating, but I'm guessing he's charging for all of his hours now.
So would it be possible to get a report of? I believe two of us are interested in seeing a more extensive record of what he's been paid. It's part of the public record. I mean, it's not a secret.
It's one or two things.
I think I can help out.
Yes.
You're more than welcome to go to the Measure U office, and we will have all of the records that you can review for Ernie. You can review his time cards, because that seems to be what you're interested in. We're happy to show them to you. It's public record.
So would it be possible just to get a report of those and to just
No,
get that?
that's extra work for my staff. The records are all there. You can come to the Measure U office. We'd be happy to show you the time cards. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so at second page, the last check, the Coastal View legal advertisement, $544. I was worrying about that charge.
For certain HR positions were required to advertise, and that was we had to meet the legal requirement of what that advertisement was. So that's why they charged us for it.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All righty. We'll move on to gifts, grants, and donations. Item G2A is a donation from Southern California Edison, Your Cause, to Carpenter High School Virtual Enterprise Club in the amount of $300. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Southern California Edison. Item G2B, a donation from the Boosters Club to the High School Athletics General Fund in the amount of $5,000. I get a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item G2C is a donation for bowling and PE class at Rincon High School in the amount of $204 from Veronica Nixon. Can I get a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item G2D, a donation from CEF to Carpenter Unified School District for high school science equipment in the amount of $16,600.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, with gratitude.
I just have some questions for this one, though. Do we have any of the representatives here tonight?
Me? Yes, Sally.
Okay. Just
Signed the check?
Yeah, I'm just, there had been some emails from Ms. Rigby, Diana, in December indicating that the carp growers were interested in donating some money for science equipment. And I just wanted to confirm that none of this $16,000 originated from the Carp Growers Association.
I believe it says right here, this donation comes from the Carpentry Alliance Club Festival of Trees, and then CEF matched it.
Right, but as we saw in the last donation, there was a channeling of the money through the Rotary Club. So I just want to confirm for the record that none of this $16,000, or if it did any of this money originate from the Carp Growers Association?
As it says, I will read it again. It says $8,300 from the Festival of Trees, that's the Carpentry Alliance Club, and CEF has an $8,300 match.
So you're confirming that CEF did not receive any of that $8,300 from the Carp Growers Association?
No, what I'm confirming is CEF is donating the $8,300.
So do you not know if I'm just simply trying in
The
December.
money, the $8,300 was extra donation that we received from Copacabana last September from the community, an event held at the high school, and we had a surplus of funds, and we donated that money to this appropriate fund.
Okay.
So all community members from Carpinteria.
Okay, and the only reason I'm bringing this up was because, Diana, you sent a message, an email in December indicating that the carp growers were interested in donating money towards the science equipment. So that's why when I saw a donation for science equipment, and because last time it said Lions or it said Rotary, but it was actually from another source, I'm just being extra vigilant about this piece to get it clear for the community.
Are you continuing to try to deny the district money for science
not,
equipment?
I'm not. This is not a vote. I'm discussing.
It is a vote, actually.
Yes, it is a vote.
It is a vote in one moment, but right now what we're doing is discussing.
Exactly, and I'm asking the question.
Right.
So
and
you seem to be opposed to
a
money.
discussion is not
money.
a denial of money. A discussion is a discussion. So are you saying that you'd like to take a vote?
No, we're still discussing this. Apparently, I was ready to take a vote a minute ago, and you questioned where the money came from. Are you done with your questions?
As long as I believe I've gotten all the information that I need and feel secure in the fact that that I know where this money originated from.
So just hypothetically, if someone in the community who is involved in the enterprise of growing cannabis attended Copacabana and bought something there, would that be would you be in opposition to that?
I don't think anyone in this audience is really interested in we could go down a really deep rabbit hole of speculating about who bought what and when and why and how. I'm simply asking.
That seems to be what you're doing every time you bring this up.
I'm calling for a vote.
That's
which is within my right to do. So
it's in your right to do, but
I would like to call for a vote.
But I'd like to ask,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I would like to call for a vote.
It seems like you like to ask questions, but you don't like to give your opinion on things. So
I think what I can say is I cannot guarantee who was at Copacabana that gave the $8,300 that participated, because it was everybody who was there.
So, and again, this is all brought about, Ms. Rigby, by your comment December 6th, 2017, the email that you sent the board, indicating that you were very excited that the carp growers were donating money for science equipment. Yes. That was then reported in the New York Times, that it had already been donated. That was already reported. So then you denied it. You denied that the district received any money. And so it was very confusing, and I'm just following through for due diligence because a lot of
the New York Times is not accurate.
A lot of people in the community, agree with my stance, which is that accepting gifts from the Carp Growers Association and other cannabis growers is a violation of our bylaws, and they are very concerned about that donation or any donation from cannabis growers. This is not my personal opinion. This is a bylaw. And this is a reflection of the community. So I am doing my due diligence and asking the question that needed to be asked. It was answered, and I would like to move forward.
Yeah, so what I might suggest is the donations from the community involve those farmers as well. So you might are you suggesting that you're not going to support any donations from community members, because the $8,300 comes from CEF, that comes from community members?
Okay. Alrighty. So all those in favor of this very generous donation from Carpentry Education Foundation, say aye.
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 Okay. Move on to item G3, and this is a vote to approve the appointment of Klaus Lensander from Summerlin to the District Real Property Advisory Committee for the owned Whitney property.
Yes, at the April 10th, 2018 board meeting, 7 community and district members were appointed to the District Advisory Committee, and that's following Ed Code 17389, 17390 to develop recommendations for the disposition of both the Baylord and the Whitney properties. During October of 2018, Sarah Gorman, who was the representative from Summerlin, she resigned because she relocated to Santa Barbara. So in early January of 2019, I attended the Summerlin Citizen Association meeting to discuss our DAC work and the Summerlin Measure U projects. We also solicited volunteers for the DAC to replace Sarah Gorman. And Klaus Lensander, who's been a Summerlin resident for the last 4 years. He's also a parent of a Summerlin student. He is interested in serving as that representative, and we appreciate him volunteering at this time. And we are going to be meeting next week, so we recommend his appointment.
All right. Can I get a motion to appoint?
I'll motion to appoint Klaus Lensander to the DAC.
I second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
I believe last time when this came up, part of the reason, I think it's honestly ridiculous that we're considering something that was a motion that failed is now being addressed again. So I find that fascinating, first of all. Second of all, part of the reason that I didn't vote in favor of the recommendation last time was that there was no information provided on this person's background other than, kind of one sentence about, having a student at the school. This committee is a very, very important committee. It's going to have a huge job ahead of them. There's property disposition that's going to be considered, which I think is a huge task that has generational ramifications. And I simply ask that there be a little bit more information provided. I also asked that the item be tabled for full consideration. That was ignored. So I'm frankly sort of surprised to see it again, after it was refused to be tabled. So that was interesting. And then the fact that it was brought up again, but no additional information was provided, I couldn't support it the first time and can't support it again because I feel like this is just such an important piece.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of appointing Klaus Lensender from Summerlin to the District Real Property Advisory Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion carries 3-2. Move on to item G4. We're going to talk about the budget.
Sorry. Yeah. So before we begin, I do want to report that we did receive from the county the first interim report analysis and recommendation. They did concur with our district's positive certification. However, they did indicate that the district should continue reviewing and planning for potential expenditure reductions to ensure it meets the state-required minimum reserve in future years, and they've requested that we include an itemized list of reductions to be provided for the 1920 budget. And that's from the county. So again, this is most of the information was shared at the last budget study session, but we'd like to reinforce our core principles in developing the budget. So we begin with a mission, and the most important words here are all students can learn, capable of being successful in our diverse society, quality educational programs and caring positive environments, and providing students with necessary skills to be responsible citizens. We have 3 core values in our district. Academic achievement, which means that we expect all students to perform at and above grade level. Our goal is 100% graduation rate, and associated with that is 100% career and college ready. Respectful community that really focuses on school climate and relationships, a strong relation between home and school. Love and respect in our schools and a high sense of belonging for both the students and the staff. And continuous improvement is associated with promoting lifelong learners, both in students and staff and teachers. We have district goals for this year, and these goals were presented during our LCAP. And increase student learning, promote safe and respectful schools, develop budgets to support educational programs while being sustainable, increase efficiency and effectiveness of district operations, and build community support and engagement. When we develop the budget and begin the budgeting process, we have budgeting principles that we follow. Students and their learning are at the center of our decisions. Teaching and learning conditions matter for student success, and our requests for any resources for programs, services, and activities need to reflect our 3 core values: academic achievement, respectful community, and continuous improvement. In addition, the definition of sustainability in a basic aid district is that we need to have at least 10% reserves. Most basic aid districts carry anywhere between 30 to 80, 90% in reserves, and we really struggle to even get close to 10%. However, in the last 5 years, our reserves ranged from 8.4% to 14.01%. That's on page 15. So our goal is for sustainability, is to work towards maintaining reserves that are close to 10%. The process for budget development includes these study sessions, and during the school board meetings, we will also continue to look at developing the 1920 budget. And then Maureen provides the monthly updates to the board. We also meet regularly with our leadership team to discuss student learning and program improvements to increase student learning, as well as the budget recommendations. The leadership team takes it back to their school site staff, reviews the budget discussion at the board, also makes recommendations for improvements and reductions. We collect feedback from the employees, and we also make sure that from now until April that we're focusing on developing this budget, and that's an agenda item at the board meetings. And we also have our specialized board study sessions, of which the February 19th is canceled during a schedule conflict, but we will hold one March 19th and April 30th. In addition, we have 5 more school board meetings that this will be included in. Maureen will review the budget timelines and major milestones.
So we begin the process. I begin the process in January once the governor's budget is released, and that happened last month. I start to build the preliminary 1920 budget, and I presented that at the January 19th board budget study session, the version of that. You can see that the process continues through February, where we start to actually incorporate actual data. I roll the system to 1920, start to build it in actuality in our escape system. I'm also in February working on the second interim, which you'll see at the March board meeting, which is our actuals through January. So I start to evaluate the budget for 18-19 at that point, which helps me update and be able to build the 1920 and know the assumptions. You'll see that in February we did cancel the 19th study session. However, we're going to be bringing at this board meeting this presentation, then another presentation on the 26th based on tonight's outcome. We continue to review the LCAP every month until June. March has some very major milestones, including the March 15th deadline, which is a certificated ed code requirement for releasing certificated staff. They have to be notified by March 15th. The second interim is due March 15th also. We have another study session in March, and the LCAP budget conversation continues. Again, a budget study session in April. The governor's May revision comes out in May. That's more important to us than the January budget. In May, there's a couple of things that are really significant in that May revision. If there are any additional state dollars in the current year, that's when the governor usually says state revenues are up, we're going to give additional one-time money, or that kind of thing happens. Let's keep our fingers crossed. I don't know. It also gets a better picture based on state revenues for the current year, whether or not from that January proposal there'll be any revisions to the 1920 from the governor. There's a lot that happens between January and May, both with the Legislative Analyst's Office and the Department of Finance. They both analyze his budget, make opinions. It goes through a lot of different vetting, and then the governor makes or changes proposals based on that process. In June, by June 15th, the state has to adopt the budget. It will be adopted by June 15th. If not, the legislature loses pay, and that's now in Ed Code. We'll bring the preliminary adopted budget and the LCAP to the board on June 11th in a public hearing format, and then for adoption on June 25th. That's our timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into some of the assumptions, starting with the governor's January budget proposal. And a lot of this was shared. It's duplicate from the January study session. The governor is projecting for the LCFF districts a 3.46% COLA, cost of living adjustment. And at the same time, since we're basic aid and we're property tax funded, our projected property tax revenues are about a 4.92% increase. So we're still outpacing state COLA. However, the next box talks about our pension increases. And you can see both for CalPERS and CalSTRS, it's significantly increasing over time through 21-22, where you see CalPERS is just under 25% of salary, and CalSTRS is just under 19% of salary. And the third box, the third grid down below shows the entire statutory package. This is workers' comp, unemployment, Medicare, Social Security, and retirement costs that the employer pays. Starts to reach very high numbers. And you can see for planning 1920, we're at just under 30% and 20% at the cost of total benefits to salary. So this is one of the biggest contributors statewide to an imbalanced and disproportionate increase in expenditures versus revenues. And then you can see the very bottom grid are the one-time dollars that have been coming into school districts. They started in 14-15. They peaked in 15-16. We still have some this year. There is zero in the governor's budget for next year. this next slide, I think, is just, it's kind of a call to those statutory benefits. And what I wanted to do is give an example, and these are just random salaries on an average basis of the cost to the district of certain position types. So a 6-hour classroom aide working 180 days, which is a student calendar, costs the district about $46,493, of which 23,000, just under 23, is just the health and welfare and benefit package. And you get to, down the line, you get to a 12-month custodian, 8 hours, an average salary of 41, costs about 74,000. And then a teacher with a salary of about 75,000 costs us about 110,000. So you can see as we're building future budgets and moving past 1920 to 2021, 21-22, with the rising cost of those salaries, that can start to outpace any new revenue. Since we are property tax funded, this is a historical picture of our actual property tax receipts, starting with 13-14. I will talk to the 18-19 projection because it looks significantly lower from 17-18. But I need to tell you what happens with property taxes every year, and this happens when we get our final receipts in July, is if there were any one-time impounds or assessments or catch-ups that don't carry into the future year, they happen at year end. And we received just under $600,000 last year of one-time impound assessments and dollars. That's not ongoing. So that's why you see that imbalance increase, because in 17-18, that 21.7 really should only be about a 21.2, just under 21.2. So it really was about a 4.9-ish increase when you look at unsecured, secured, and homeowners to the same taxes moving forward. And so in 1920 and 2021, you see the projection balance back out because I'm not taking into time dollars into consideration. I will tell you that for property taxes, we don't receive cash but 3 times a year. In December, in April, pretty much when you pay them and when you pay them, and then we get settled up or trued up the first week of July. So we receive no other cash other than those 3 times for the majority of the costs for our budget. And in July, and this is after the year's already over, any one-time money materializes. So when I look back, I did a look-back period of almost 15 years. That one-time money has been a negative $200,000, and it has been, like in the 17-18 year, a positive 500 and just under 590,000. It's been 2,000. It's been 56. It's all over the place. So it's not a projected, predictive dollar we can count on. So when I do my projections and I do my forecasting, it is data-driven. It is statistical based on actual secured, unsecured, and homeowners. Those are the actual pieces that are guaranteed. Moving on to the actual meat of our budget, this is a grid of our 18-19 staffing by FTE summary. These are the unrestricted parts of our budget. This doesn't include categorical money, grant money, and does not include special ed. This is just the core unrestricted part of our budget. And you can see the positions along the top, left to right, and the sites going down the left column, and the FTEs. I don't have to review, it's pretty small. Good information. You can see that it's not like pretty hefty. And then we start going into some historical statistical information. And the first is the cost of living increases to staff over time. So you can see, I'm going to go straight onto the right side, the average cost of living for certificated and classified has been around a 2 to 2.5%. The top average is including the 12-13 year, which is off schedule, meaning it did not go on the salary schedule. It was more like a bonus. And the bottom number that excludes that is the actual on schedule average. So you have to kind of separate them and look at the comparative. So the average of all of these is about a 2.5%. And then the cost of our, the history of our health and welfare increases. I will say that Carpinteria is one of a select number of districts left in the state that pays 100% of the health premium for our employees. That doesn't mean we pay 100% of the medical bills. It's 100% of the premium. And our average, our full-time premium right now is a $19,781 cost per full-time employee. And we do pay the pro rata share for our employees who work 20 or more hours up to 8. And then at 8, you pay you pay the 100%. And you can see over time, our premiums have fluctuated, and there were 2 significant periods of time where we had plan changes to help mitigate the rising cost of premiums. So as I built the 1920 budget, I went and took the 3 prior years, 16, 17, 17, 18, and the current year, which we know those are set increases, and averaged the 3, and that's about a 3.5% increase, which is what I used. It's difficult to use any prior year data because you have plan changes, and it's apples and oranges when you do averages. The next is a 5-year with current year-over-year financial history. And this is kind of small to see up on the slide, but I think what's significant about this slide is the percent increase of revenues comparative to the percent increase of expenditures. It varies, and a lot of the variance here is because of those fluctuating one-time dollars that kind of went up, down, and then gone. But our expenditure increases have consistently outpaced any new revenues coming in, even with a higher percent increase than a COLA that the state would give. So you can imagine the LCFF districts are having an even harder time trying to balance their budgets with any new revenues to the rising costs of expenditures. We did end the year in 17-18. This is actual data. We ended the year with a $558,000 deficit. That was down from the original first interim report that was $1 million. So we have continued to pare budgets and pare budgets and pare budgets until our budgets are pretty much very bare bones spending. And I kudos to my staff. We're all kind of like budget hawks. And we are watching every dollar coming in and out. The next 5-year history is the total general fund, and this includes all of our categoricals, our Title I, II, and III. It includes special education, restricted maintenance, all of those buckets. And this is the total general fund is where we calculate our reserve level, and the reserves have to come out of unrestricted dollars based on total general fund. And you can see that in 17-18, we ended total general fund with a deficit of 471, which means the restricted side, some of those grant balances were a positive, with an 8.4% in reserve. And this is where Diana was talking about our reserves have gone from 8 to 14 to what we're projecting in 18-19 to just under a 6. And I can do all of my best guesses, and I'll talk about this more at second interim about what we might close our year at this year. And it's going to be very, very close to this number. There's not a lot of surplus anywhere in this budget. So to put it in kind of a visual perspective, this is our total general fund revenue, and the big green pie is our property taxes. The blue is we have a federal revenue, and that's going to be primarily IDEA, which is special ed, and Title I, II, III, and IV. That's the primary budgets for federal. State revenues will also include some special ed. It will also include like mandate cost programs, our lottery. We don't get a lot of special ed dollars. And then the local revenue is going to be mostly donations and part of SELPA, which is kind of, it's an accounting mechanism. But you can see that the large part of our total budget comes from property taxes. And then when we turn to expenditures, you can see what happens with this big blue pie. So 83% is property taxes, 85% are salary and benefits. These are our people, as well as things like substitute teachers, etc. This is all of the costs of all the people we pay. And then you have a 4% books and supplies, 10% services and operating. That includes our utilities, our property and liability insurance, our internet contracts. All of those are included in that services and operating, so that 10% is not just consultants. It is actual operating, custodial costs, etc. And then we have a little bit of other outgo, which is part of our SELPA, and we have some bus lease payments. So that's a small part of that. This is one of my favorite pie charts. Function is one of the criteria we use in our state accounting. It's a indicator of where our money is going as far as whether it's in the classroom or supporting the classroom. And I think this is where, when we talk about our goals, it clearly reflects our investment in education. 56% of our budget is straight into the classroom. Straight into the classroom, teachers and teacher aides. We have 11% that are non-classroom support. Those are categorized, that's professional development, that is curriculum, it is everything that may not be directly in the classroom, hands-on kids, but it's all the services that support that. And then you have pupil services, which is our psychologists, our counselors, our nurses, speech and language people, and then athletics and after-school programs. General administration in that category is our property and liability and all of the administrative pieces, including people, and then the plant services are utilities and all of the custodial, and then a small piece of other outgo, which represents the transfers out to SELPA for the services that Kirsten talked about that we have contracted out the SELPA for because we're too small to have our own in-house services. But this really shows how invested we are in education. In Kirsten's presentation, it talked about the 5-year history with special ed. I will mention a couple of things on this slide about special ed costs. We are still below the state average in per pupil spending. And I think that's to the kudos of the way Kirsten is managing this program. There's every thought made to making sure that resources aren't just put out there at an ask. It's evaluated. Do we do we currently have services that we can use and enhance for that are existing? There's always those conversations that are had, but there's also a couple of education code requirements that pertain to special ed that we have to consider when we look at expenditures going into like building next year's budget. There is a maintenance of effort requirement that we cannot spend $1 less next year than we did this year. So there's not an option to say, why don't we just reduce aids? For 2 reasons. Not just because of the maintenance of effort requirement that says we can't spend $1 more next year less, but if any service, and this is how special ed is driven, is written into an IEP, we're mandated by law. It cannot be reduced. You cannot contest it. You cannot challenge it. It is now mandated. So it looks like a lot of money, but we have to realize these are our kids. These kids have more significant needs than maybe our general ed students. However, it's not going away. It is what it is. It's just information that we have to look at. So now we're talking about 1920. As we start to build with all of the things I just shared, we're starting with unrestricted revenues of the current year, $21 million. Our property tax increases at that 4.92% are $1.1 million, more money. We have to reduce that 18-19 for the one-time money we will not get in 1920, and that's a reduction of $384,000. We received one-time money in 18-19 for the Thomas Fire that we're not going to get next year. We have to reduce that amount of money. And then we have special education considerations that affect our revenue because that's what pays for the special ed side. And we are increasing a special ed teacher. We currently are out of compliance with caseload sizes. And we also have to pay for special ed step and column, which is our collective bargaining agreement increases. And that is a total reduction of our general fund revenue by $147,000. So going in to 1920, we're looking at $21.5 million, and that's about a 2% increase over prior year. This is on slide 21. We talk about our drivers, the things that are statutorily required to increase in our budget. We have step and column, which is in our collective bargaining agreement. That's $191,000. I'm estimating a 3.5% health and welfare. I covered that on the health and welfare slide. That's $137,600. We have pension increases. Our pensions are going up systemically each year, and the cost of PERS and STIRS is just over $200,000 together. We do anticipate, and this is just an average and an estimate of our utility and property tax increases of about 5%. We usually start there. That utilities, it covers a lot of different things: garbage, water, power, gas, and they're all over the place. It usually averages out about a 5%. It could be 4, it could be 5, but we built in 5. So our total adds to the expenditure budget is $589. That's already a 2.7% increase over prior year. So we've already added more than we're getting. And we haven't even talked about anything like cost of living adjustment for staff, which at a 1% cost is $191,000. Those are not in these drivers. Last year we had proposed program improvements in 1920. We are not. However, the conversation was discussed in January about board health benefits, and you can see the board cost of benefits here. But they're not built into the right-hand column, so I did not include them in the budget at this time. That would take a board action. And then we come to our where we are with our budget reductions and making sure that our budget is sustainable. Last year, we did reduce the unrestricted general fund by $726,000. There were a lot of reductions that went into that, a lot of discussion. I don't need to read the whole slide. So we are now going into the 1920 knowing that we have to make more reductions. And the reality is this is probably an ongoing pattern if we want to give compensation. This is talking to a reduction of 802. That's what was presented in January, but we're going to talk about some different scenarios tonight, different from the January budget update. This is kind of small to see, so I'm going to read it out just so if you're watching you can understand and see it. So these are numbered 1 through 13, and once I go through all 13, then we'll go to the following slides, and will explain a little bit more about how what we're doing to build what reductions into our budget. I will stop at 13 at page 24 and 25 if the board has any discussion and wants to talk, but I would recommend that I go through all the slides and we can go back. So number 1 is the curriculum adoption 1819 one-time expenditure reduction of $215,000. We adopted 2 curriculum this year. Next year we're only adopting 1. This is a one-time expenditure. We can do this reduction without impacting anything. We have number 2 is a reduction of 1 FTE teacher at the high school through a retirement. That's a savings of $130,624. Number 3 is a reduction of 1 classified staff through a retirement for a savings of $79,328. And the reduction will result in shared services between Catalino and Aliso. Number 4 is a 0.51 FTE custodian at the middle school for a total of $43,167. This leaves them with 2 custodians for 495 students, which is in line with all of the ratios for the rest of our sites. Number 5 is a reduction of 0.3175 for a tech support specialist 1. It is the only position like this in the entire district, and it's duplicate of our library media support staff. Number 6 is a reduction of 1 section at the high school of independent study. It is not needed. It was an additional section this year. We don't need it next year. And then number 7 is a reduction of athletics by $40,000. and that reduction will be a collaborative effort with the high school and athletic staff. It will be in transportation costs, which are quite high, and they'll determine what those will be. It will also be in the low participating sports, and they'll have to maintain Title IX. There's a lot to consider here, but we're asking that to be $40,000. Number 8 is just under 5. It's 4.969 FTE in classroom aides, and this is reducing classroom aides for all grades with the exception of TK, K, and combo classes. So this leaves, even though this is a reduction of 4.96, it leaves just under 12 FTE for the general fund. Number 9 are curriculum field trips. This was an add in the budget this year. We're pulling that back out, that's $75,000. And I believe that this is something we can look to our community to help fund. Number 10 is reducing a 1 FTE bus driver. This isn't reducing a body. This is reducing our drivers who are 8 hours a day down to 6 hours a day and having them work split shift. Like most of the drivers in the state of California work between 4 and 6 hours, and they work morning shift, afternoon shift, and they have a split in their day. Number 11 is a 0.5 library media tech at the high school. It would change the dates, the times that the library is open for a savings of $33,000. Number 12 are 2 FTE classroom teachers at the high school. This is you can read the description. This is a reduction in 2 teachers that will result in an increase in class size for math and science. And this is a reduction. We'll get into this a little bit later when we look at our scenarios. The high school, as it's declined enrollment, has not received any reduction in staff. So when we look at caseloads, you can see this doesn't change them much. And number 13 would be a reduction of 11.4 aides, adding 5 FTE back in to recover noon duty, and this would be the rest of our classroom aides, understanding that we need some coverage for noon duty. And the net of this is $389,000. So the total reductions that have been introduced here total $1.5 million. And these are 13 options that you have to consider. So I'm going to move forward real quick. On page 26, as presented in January, our 18-19 unrestricted expenditures were $21.8 million. We've added our $589,000 in drivers. I considered the targeted reductions presented in January. I left them here of $802,000. Does not tie back necessarily to the options and the 13 options we did, although some of them are in there. For a net change to our expenditures of a negative just under 1%. And remember that there's nothing in here to consider compensation increases. Page 27, it shows our ending balance from 18-19 that we're projecting at $1.7 million. Our 19-20 revenue of $21.5, our expenditures of $21.6. Even with $802,000 in reductions, we're still going to deficit spend just under $100,000 with an anticipated 5.56% reserve. So we're still not close to our 10. So now I'm going to talk about some multi-year scenarios, and when I get through these, then is the discussion about the reductions and options. Scenario 1 is if we did not make any reductions at all. If we left the budget the way it is and we added our drivers in, you can see in 1920 and 2021 we do not have our minimum 3% reserve. In this scenario, we would run out of cash and we would have a negative certification. And what happens with a negative certification is the county and the state come and take it over. We don't have options. So this is a scenario that's not an option. Scenario 2 is if we take the reductions presented in January of a total of $802,000. It gives us the 5.58% reserve in 1920, and then it compounds itself over 2021, 21, 22 to a 10.8 in 3 years out. Remember, there's no compensation increases here, and a 1% is $191,000. Scenario 3 is if we just cut enough to get 3% minimum requirement. What would that number be? It'd be about $185,000. Anything less than that would not give us 3% all 3 years. And in this scenario, you can see the deficit in 1920 and 2021, and it only mitigates itself in 21-22. But you have to understand that 3 years out is it's a projection that will change no matter what. Every year the governor will change that. Scenario 4 is if we reduced everything on the list up to number 11. That would equal $982,000. That would give us 6.2, 8, and 13. So it improves our situation. It mitigates a deficit in 1920, and it starts to build the reserve back up. Remember, no compensation in here. And then the last scenario is all of the reductions. This is not one we're recommending as staff. And it builds a reserve over 3 years up to 18%. I don't think we've seen that ever. That's very severe. And this is, you look at that list of reductions, and that's not a very palatable. So I'm going to go back to the reduction slides.
So just so that everyone's on the same page here, as far as direction needed tonight, staff needs direction on specific reductions.
Yes, because we are thinking about the March 15th deadline, so we need to work with our staff, and we're interested in what. First, again, we need to know the target number of reductions. And originally, we had proposed the 806,000. You came back in last week with 900,000. So we've given you that. And so we need to know what the target number is, and then what the reductions that you're interested in at this point.
Okay.
Are we having a discussion here?
No, we're not. I was just getting just so everyone's on the same page, what we're trying to achieve tonight. That was it.
Okay, so in the final two scenarios, the $980,000 takes us through reduction number 11. It does not include 2 classroom high school teachers, and it does not include all of the rest of the aides. So those 2 cuts are not being recommended by staff, but we wanted to give you some deep options for your consideration. And I would welcome conversation.
Do you know about all retirements?
We have 2 certificated retirements at this point. One is one that we're proposing not be replaced.
Right.
The other is at an elementary school and will be replaced.
But you don't know if there's any others? 'Cause
Nope.
that always happens.
And I'll tell you, historically, we don't get those until much later,
Right.
towards the end of school.
Right. Or somebody moves.
Yes. However, we're looking at positions. Yeah. So any other retirements we'd replace. Right.
I have a question to number 9, your K curriculum field trips. You started funding CME last year.
Yes.
For half of it. And
Yes.
then the school parent groups pay for the other half.
Yes.
If we decide to take this funding away, will you again allow the parent groups to start paying for this, or is that not going to happen still?
We want it to be equitable. And so that's why we moved to 50% parents and 50% district, because not all school sites could raise the 100%.
Right.
So what we're starting to do now is I'm soliciting a donation that will support the $75,000. Just like we solicited the donation for the arts program, we are soliciting the $75,000 donation for the science curriculum field trips, so that we can continue the model that we're working with right now, because that's more equitable. And that's a real concern. Previously, the field trips were not equitable. Now they're more equitable with the model we have in place. So that's what we're going to continue to move forward with.
And should you not get that funding, we just won't do those field trips?
I am confident we will get the funding for that particular item.
Personally, I appreciate the effort, any effort that we take to be equitable as a district.
Okay. So are you done with your presentation?
Yes,
So
I'm done.
So
I'm
now,
done.
Now we're going to have discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Once again, this is probably the least fun part of this job. I guess I'll start off here. 'Cause I think what we should probably do is just be very systematic about this and go down the list. And I think last meeting, I was in agreement that the cuts that were presented, I was in favor of, and then I asked for an additional, I think, approximately $100,000, and this scenario 4 takes us to a little over that. Is that correct? Scenario 4 is the one that
Yeah,
stops
just
at
over 9,000.
line 11, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
982.
The question I have, I guess, one question I have is the it would have to do with the only change I see here is the athletics is increased. The cut to athletics is increased by 20,000, and that's primarily transportation.
I don't think it'll be exclusively transportation. I think they're looking at a couple of the lowest performing sports that participating sports that cost a lot as far as travel is concerned. However, we have Title IX to consider, so it is kind of a challenge to look at making sure we are Title IX compliant in our offerings. So the high school is doing work to come up with more solid recommendations to address the 40. We don't have that exact list at this point.
Okay.
You real briefly just tell me what Title IX entails. Title IX, what is that?
Oh, so Title IX is making sure that we have the equal opportunities for females and males in sports.
It was a law that passed in the 70s, and it basically is what now allowed women to participate in sports. I don't know about your mom, but my mom couldn't. There were no sports for women when my mom was in school.
I'm not arguing the principle of it, just want to know what it was.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, so there was we had a Title IX report, if you're interested, where a consultant came in and specifically said, because if you're out of compliance with Title IX, it can be a legal liability. So you have to be able, if you have X amount of sports for boys, you have to have X amount of sports funding for girls. It's an equality thing.
Okay. Another question on the athletics. Should you reduce the busing or the expenditures on one sport? Say you do it for basketball. Can basketball parents fundraise to do those field trips instead, or?
And actually, most districts, the boosters, in fact, do pay for transportation. So that's pretty common. So, and that is, I'm sure the boosters will take a look at that as well. And yes, the answer to your question is yes, of course.
They'll be able to pay for it.
And there, probably be a bigger push to get more parent drivers, because right now I know that's an issue with a lot of sports, is that there aren't enough parents sometimes to drive, and so we have to use the buses, which costs a fair amount.
Isn't there an issue with parent drivers as far as insurance is concerned, or?
No, not in district vehicles.
Yes.
As long as they drive district.
District,
Okay.
yeah. It's the vans that they drive.
They still have to have their license.
Yes.
So the only thing that I'd like to kind of explore the additional, maybe half of the high school proposal, if we cut a position there in math.
No, we're not considering that.
Oh, we aren't?
No.
Okay.
No, we're not recommending science and math to be cut. 12
Okay,
and 13
all right.
or the rest of the instructional assistants.
All right.
No,
Very good.
we stop at 11.
11.
The last one is the library media technician moving from full-time to part-time.
Yep.
So that would be the last reduction
Okay.
for scenario 4.
Do you have any comments, Rogelio?
Yes, actually plenty. The first budget report that I got, actually, the first version, 27 pages. Then at the budget session, got a second version of it with more pages attached to it. Then today, a third version, 32 pages with additional reductions. And my question is this, will it be another version next time?
It all depends on what the board direction is. That's why we're asking 2 questions. What we need to know is, what is the target number of reductions that you're interested in, and what areas of reductions are you interested in us further discussing or researching? From the leadership team, these are our recommendations based on the information that we have. And so now we need you to give us some guidance. So that's what we're asking the board.
And the first,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
So the first 11 were all recommended by the leaders at the schools.
No, the leadership team, did an analysis of what we're spending right now. We did an analysis of what our current budget expenditures and revenues are, and following our principles, we wanted to keep it as far away for the classroom as we possibly can. But since we already reduced $750,000 last year, now we have to reduce another $800,000 to $900,000. We are going to have to reduce staff. So we looked at all the staff you see on page with the FTE counts. Yeah, we looked at all of those FTE counts on page 11, and we made the recommendations. So
The question that I have, all of these reductions, all of these possibilities, and I'm going to ask you this because actually I don't know. Have you discussed this with union leadership?
Oh,
Have you consulted with them?
They're all part of the site teams, yes.
From 1 through 13?
Yes, they're all part of the site teams. Yes.
So the question, really the question here that we have really is where each one of us feels comfortable with as far as our reserves now 3 years out.
Roger, are you asking about you're asking about union stuff?
Correct.
Yeah, I was actually wondering that too, specifically considering the challenge last year with the classroom aides. I'm just wondering about the protocol and all that for eliminating of like the classroom aides and the bus drivers.
That's really not what we're here to discuss tonight.
Well, it is important because last year what happened is we made a decision thinking, we're just doing one thing, but the consequences of that decision were, I think, it's certainly not what I expected. I didn't expect the result, and I don't want to go back into that, but I think it is important to be aware from a human resources standpoint, the protocol of what would happen if particular reductions were made, because there are union guidelines for how reductions have to be made, and
exactly, and that's why we need to make a decision tonight.
But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's important for me to understand the consequences of these decisions and what the protocol and. Anyways, Roger was speaking, so I want to let Roger get back to his comments because I have my own list.
What you're talking about is down at this level. What we're trying to discuss tonight at these budget study sessions is up here, so we can direct staff to then go and explore what it's going to take to implement these changes, and then at that point in time, we can ask those questions on on the HR side. But this is not the time or place to discuss specific HR issues. We need to decide individually and as a board where we feel comfortable with our budget. Do we feel comfortable with 3%? Do we feel comfortable with 8%? Do we feel comfortable with 10%? And that's really what it comes down to. We can't sit here and equivocate and say we need more information, or we need to know exactly how human resources is going to handle reductions in staff. This is not the time and place for that.
Well, the question that comes to my mind is that, well, let's say you want to present this to union leadership, to the district leadership. Okay, we got 3, 4, or 5 members agreeing on this. That just like, okay, then present it to the union leadership as that 3 or 5 of us agree on the budget. And I think that because last year I asked the same question. Now that I my mind goes back to March of last year, exactly the same question as the union leadership being contacted.
Okay.
Have they agreed to this? And the response that I got is yes. Yes, but the fact was that they were not contacted. That's
Does the union need to approve our budget?
Look.
No, I'm just asking. In your opinion, does the union need to approve our budget?
Wait. That is why teachers belong to a union, correct? They need basically people, union leadership, who can speak for them before the fact or during the fact, but not after the fact. That's what I think. That's why they belong to a union. That's why they.
So
maybe I can help and explain.
Yeah, that's why they're members of a.
Sure. So
of a
I think we're all saying the same thing. I think what's confusing is the steps in the process.
Correct.
So
but
yes,
the protocol.
The protocol. So let me just read for you the protocol. Once the budget is determined, and this is according to school services that work with all school districts. Once that the LEA issues notices of layoff in the spring, the next step is they negotiate with their union the impacts of any layoffs. So you're right. Yes, we absolutely discuss the reductions with the union, but after the board has said which particular reductions, because it's not helpful to negotiate the impacts of a reduction that's not going to actually happen. So first, the board has to make a decision because the board is responsible for the budget to say this is the amount of reductions you need to make. These are the reductions you need to do. And then the staff will say that affects this group of employees and this group of employees. And then we work with the union leadership and we base it on the collective bargaining agreement, which we followed last year, which is very challenging because the agreement is what made everybody, the process in the agreement is what people did not like. However, that is what's in the agreement. So we have to follow it. We followed it, the contract, and that's what we'll do this time. But the timing, it doesn't happen before the decision. The board has made the decision. This is the layoff. These are the reductions. We need that decision first before we negotiate with the union, the impacts.
I think my understanding and is a sort of every action has a consequence kind of understanding. So, for instance, I think it's appropriate at a board level to say what happens if we decide to lay off 5 teachers. That is a reasonable thing for us to ask. it's reasonable for us to try and understand the consequences of our actions before we take those actions. And one of those consequences is a process by which the union will have, the school district, in accordance with the union agreement, will have to undertake a series of steps. I think it's reasonable as a board to consider the steps that the union requires us to take before we take an action, just because that's not free too. So all the time and energy that it took to execute those actions, it's not free. And then there's various costs associated with that, not only fiscal costs, but just kind of emotional. There's emotional cost to it. And I think we saw that last year, especially with positions that are hard to fill. So, Mr. Delgado, did you have any further things that you want to say? Because I have a few points here.
Go ahead.
Can I add something about the process real quick before you continue?
Sure.
So when we get direction from the board on the cuts and how we're going to continue to build our budget, and we know what positions are going to be reduced or eliminated, we bring to you, like you saw last year, a resolution for reductions in particular kinds of service, including eliminations of positions, in a resolution. And that has to come to you, and it has to be heard, and people can comment on it, and the board has to pass that resolution. Once that resolution is passed, then the effects are discussed. That's the process. So it doesn't happen now. It can't happen until you've actually taken action at a board level with a resolution. And then the collective bargaining agreement comes into play, and that's when we negotiate the effects.
Yes.
So I want to just thank you for clarifying that. Can I go ahead and give my thoughts now? I want to say just thank you so much for providing options. I feel like a lot of energy was spent at the budget study session on the possibility of creating options, and so I'm just delighted to see so many. And I guess the way my mind works, I even see options within the options. So I hope as a board that's also something to consider. Like for the classroom teachers, for instance, you could see that eliminating one CHS classroom teacher might be an option rather than two. So just that's my point. But thank you so much. I know it took a lot of work to put all these 13 items together. Second, what I would like to see, and I think I said this next time, was kind of, once we narrow down the options, I would really like, in the same way that we have kind of these cover sheets, it would be really great to see the curriculum. We see the fiscal impact, right? That's really easy to see. If we make a cut, we save this money. However, I don't see any of these cuts strictly through the lens of money. I see them through the lens of bang for our buck. So I would like to know the curricular implications for each of these things. That would be really helpful. And understanding how, just any anticipated impacts, pros and cons, if there are any. I think it's important for us to consider the consequences of our choices in a really thoughtful way. Number 3, in our last budget, $200,000 of the $800,000 in reductions was reducing the curriculum adoption that we only did last year, and I didn't see that back on these options.
Yeah, number one.
It's number one.
Oh, it's number 1. Okay, I just missed it. Okay. And I'm a little confused about why that wasn't a cost savings rather than a budget reduction, if that makes sense.
That's the way budgets are built.
Well, just because
so it was built in last year, so we're not going to spend it this year.
So the way we build the 1920 budget is from 1819. So $215,000 was in 1819, and now we're going to reduce it for 1920.
No, I understand that, but just like in our anticipated revenues, anyways, it doesn't matter. It's there, and I found it, so we'll just move on. The fourth point that I wanted to make is that it seems, and I feel like this has been mentioned before, that we have actually a systemic deficit, meaning year after year after year, we are deficit spending. And
20 years.
And my concern is that I have voted for the last 2 years against the budgets that have been provided. This feels to me not unlike with an $800,000 in cuts. It's pretty similar to what was asked for last year, and yet here we are again kind of in the same place. And so I'm concerned that we're not looking at the systemic problem, and I'm not sure why we're not looking at that systemic problem.
That's not our, I mean, that's.
So that is California's problem. So we will always be deficit spending. It's the amount of deficit spending that you have to manage. So you've been deficit spending in Carpinteria for the last 20 years. You've been reducing budgets for the last 20 years, and we will continue to be reducing. So what we need to do at this point is to manage the reductions. That's what we need to do as we move forward.
Do you feel like that too? Because not every district has a systemic deficit.
I will tell you the majority of the districts in the state of California are deficit spending, especially local control funding formula districts. And the exact reason is, as I said earlier, the statutory increases, the drivers that you saw, are outpacing any new revenue. So
I can give you a good example for Carpinteria. So we pay 100% of our employees' health benefits. And in 9 years, that premium has increased $6,000 per year per employee. So if you multiply that by about 350 employees, you're talking well over $1 million right there. Then if you look at the statutory benefits for CalPERS and CalSTRS, Carpinteria, with our small $25 million budget, we are looking in a 7-year period of spending over $1 million more per year than we were 7 years ago, because of the mandated increases to CalPERS and CalSTRS. So those are completely out of our control, and those are things that we are statutorily obligated to, or contractually obligated to fulfill. And so any increases in our revenues are offset by these increases, these statutory increases in benefits.
And I'll also add to that, that beginning in 14-15, significantly in 15-16, we've been living on one-time money, and we've given compensation increases based on one-time money that's gone. And so everything you're seeing here doesn't have any compensation increases, and in the current budget, the deficit is because we are committed to compensation increases. We did it this year, 18-19. 18-19 has a deficit. We did it in 17-18. 17-18 had a deficit. The one-time money was higher in prior years, which helped mitigate that deficit. As long as we're going to have our drivers, our pension increases, our health and welfare increases, our step and column increases, those and any compensation increases, that will always outpace the new revenue we get from property taxes. So it's right out the gate a structural imbalance, and we can't recover that because we are not permitted to go fundraise for our general fund.
Well, I just know based on FCMAT that one of their warning signs is year-on-year deficit spending, and
Absolutely.
And so that might be.
And I've
what's
worked with
happening. That might be what's happening here for 20 years. Mm-hmm. However, that should be a warning sign, this should be a wake-up call. And for me personally, I can't continue to think that there is no solution.
So I actually have
a problem.
I have worked with FCMAT.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very familiar with their indicators. It is not one single indicator. There are 10 indicators.
Right, and another one is declining enrollment.
Well, we could get into all those indicators, and there's a couple that are very troubling that we actually have in our district. Right. And we're not going to do that because we still have adequate reserves. We are maintaining our 3% requirement, and we have never fallen below or we have never had a qualified interim or budget. That alone will not put us in FCMAT's purview. Now, the county is the first layer of oversight, and if they even remotely think that we're down the path that FCMAT has to intervene, they're going to put that in the letter that you just had Superintendent Rigby read from the CEO based on our first interim. It's clear, though, and we have said this, is that it is not a new mantra. It is not a new speculative guess, but we have said repeatedly since I've been here, now going into my third year, that cuts are inevitable to maintain reserves according to our board policy. I gave you a scenario of what minimum reserves would be to maintain just a 3%.
Right, and I really
And
appreciate
those don't have
different-
any compensation increases in them. So realize a 1% is $191,000. You add it, you've already gone into the red.
We're already uncertifiable.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at this only 3%, there's nothing in there for compensation increases, and we will go in, if we do anything like that, we could not certify without reductions mid-year or at the time we settle.
So are there some of these cuts that are more tied to solving that systemic deficit than others?
All of these, but the curriculum and the field trips would probably be the only ones that would be on a one-time basis and a non-ongoing cost basis.
All people.
This is all people, and our problem is in people.
Yeah.
So I think what would be really helpful for me is that this is my last point being, I have two more points. Last point being that it really feels important to me to make data-based decision makings, to have fact-based decision making, to have data-driven decisions, so that you have so much data and knowledge just that you contain inside you. But if we don't have access to that, it's harder for us or the community to have access to that. So perhaps I personally, and I don't want to be the sole person if there's other people, but it would be really helpful for me to see how these decisions, help mitigate some of the problems of the systemic deficit. And if you're saying it's purely personnel, anyone that's personnel, it's going to do that.
Yes.
Then okay, then I can see that. But even understanding like what the cost savings would be over the long,
that's we see that with our increases in.
No, but this is the cost saving in terms of the money, but in terms of, never mind. I'm not conveying myself clearly, but here's what I'm saying. Okay, this is about the same game plan as we had last year, right?
No.
About $600,000 to $800,000 in cuts. Primarily doing with personnel.
Cuts, though.
I know they're different cuts, but it's primarily the same game plan. It didn't solve our problem of the systemic deficit. What I'm hearing you say is that we're not going to solve our systemic deficit. And I guess I'm just an optimist, and I want to believe that for every problem there is some kind of solution out there. And it's important to me to find that solution because it will make us a healthier, I think the goal of any leader is to leave something in a better place than when you found it. And I don't necessarily feel that that's true for CUSD since I've started. I don't feel like financially we're in a better place. I don't feel like our scores are in a better place. I don't feel like our Healthy Kids survey is in a better place. So I'm in a really, really frustrated place. And for me, it's important to feel like something that, I've had a say in changing is going to make things better. So understanding the systemic deficit piece would be really helpful for me.
So Maureen, I can assure you that there is nothing on this list that is comfortable, that is better for any child in this district, better for any employee in this district. Nothing on this list is good. This is not made lightheartedly, and it is not made with lots of consideration about how we sustain our educational program and still fiscally be able to certify a budget. It is not something that is not data-driven. It is not something that we can look at lightly at any turn. So it is a very difficult thing to realize that if we don't do anything, we're not in a good position, and anything on this list did not come with great consideration and thought to what the program effects would be. So reductions are never good for anybody. Unfortunately, this is an ongoing. This is an issue that everyone's addressing, especially since the recession 10 years ago. When we are just now in the state of California funded at the 2007-8 level for most districts, they just met that funding. The LCFF brought it up to the funding level of 10 years ago. Now, because we're basic aid, we were able to survive that better, but it didn't survive better as far as the cost increases that we're having with pensions and everything else. So you're right, this is a very systemic problem in the state of California. And It's sometimes very challenging when you are listening to state budget presentations about all this money being poured into schools and we don't see it. At the same time, we have required statutory ed code limits that we have to maintain. And it's a reality that we're deficit spending. It's a reality we will deficit spend. It's a reality that compensation will go up and we have to go to the table with something. Those are all realities that we have to anticipate and plan for. And if we don't, then we're in trouble. And you're right, if we don't have that plan, then FCMAC comes in. If any two of those columns are red, we're done.
Well, I mean, there are ways to increase revenue.
Can you explain what that might be?
That could be a property tax increase that would require, multi-year planning.
It would require a vote of
yes,
like a parcel tax increase. Right. That is very difficult to do.
Absolutely.
To ask our voters
Absolutely.
to support our general fund.
Absolutely. Another thing would be, what I'm hearing you say is that benefits are one of our biggest drivers. So having that hard and difficult conversation about, we can't keep stealing from the cookie jar to, pay for whatever. I believe in my heart that there's a creative solution out there that is available to us. And it's just hard for me. I feel like I know these aren't the exact same cuts, but to me it feels very much like the same game plan that I have voted against for the last 2 years. And so it's hard. And I feel like we're getting closer in seeing options. But I think that analysis piece and that tying it to data, which says, eliminating bus drivers, does that affect a district's, achievement levels? Does the number of bus drivers affect your achievement levels? No. Okay, well then maybe that's an easier cut to make. Or media technicians, how does that affect achievement levels?
Doesn't affect it.
Well, I'm not sure because I don't have the data.
But no, excuse me. You have the data right here. It is written here. It says duplicative services with library media technician. So duplicative means that we already have that service. We do not need this service. So that is the analysis. What else, what more information do you need to know other than it's duplicative service? That says it right there.
So am I hearing you say that for each of these you would be unwilling to provide additional analysis, that you think this one sentence plus a number should be enough for us to make that decision as board members who have no direct experience with these things other than this one sentence and this number?
I believe that the duplicative service with the library media technician does explain why you would cut a tech support specialist. I think it explains it very clearly.
And as board members, we also are given the opportunity to ask those questions, and if we aren't comfortable with it, we can't. So I don't want to belabor this. My last point, and it's really important to me that we get this, set the record straight, which is that I am neither for nor against board member compensation in a remunerative fashion. We have not had a discussion of it. I did not ask for it to be included in the budget. I did not ask for there to be any sort of budgetary discussion about it, and it's clearly making people very angry, and they're clearly blaming me.
It was just informational.
So I asked for us to consider it as a policy matter only, a policy matter, because the policy matter was completely out of compliance with our current practices. Did I or did I not ask that be considered completely as a policy matter?
Sure, but let me just remind you. Excuse me.
Was I just?
Hold on.
I was just ignored and overlooked.
No.
And just it was
ask
stuck.
the question. Let
me
Mrs.
answer.
answer.
Let me
please.
answer. I would like to read the policy because the policy says at every budget development you need to consider approve board members' health and welfare benefits. So this is a budget development process, and that's why it's being considered. It has nothing to do with changing the policy. It has to do with actually the statement in our policy that at the annual budget discussion, you discuss the board benefits. So that's why, excuse me, I'm not done yet. Sorry. That's why when we started the budget development process, we put that consideration in because it's required of our policy. Now, the separate request was to bring that policy to the board meeting, which we've done tonight. That's a separate item, and that we will discuss the board policy. However, the budget development process was very separate, and we're just following our policy.
Which we didn't follow last year or the year before.
Whether we did or
So
not, that's...
actually, the fact that it was brought forth was because of a discussion that I had, first asking why we were out of compliance with this policy, and somehow that's the fact that I'm bringing it up is being conflated with a support of the issue, which, you know, and a historical discussion of the issue, which is what it is. You know, at one point, benefits were offered, now they're not. A change was made, but it wasn't made to the policy. That's it.
Well,
So I at no point expressed support or in support for it. I think I felt frustrated
you
that.
did actually.
Excuse me.
But
I
you
felt.
did-
Excuse me.
you did-
Excuse
you
me.
did express
Excuse
support,
me.
Maureen.
Excuse me. What I was trying to say, and I apologize to my board members if it got misconstrued. You're always welcome to contact me outside or talk with me outside of the dais, or any of you. I'm at mclaffey@cusd.net. You're welcome to contact me if you're upset about something and say, you know, I felt offended by that. But, you know, it sounds like people felt like, oh, I was saying, you know, you're second-rate people because you don't get benefits, which is, you know, that makes no sense. I was feeling frustrated because I did not ask for it to be considered as a policy member. I didn't understand that it was just being brought to the table because it needed to be considered, because we had never considered it in the past. You know, and I was simply, all I'm trying to do is have a discussion about board member compensation, of which right now there is 0. And I'm glad to see that that's going to be in our policy section tonight. But for the record, I just want it to be clear that we haven't, that I don't necessarily support $100,000 of spending for board member compensation. I was merely saying that was something that happened in the past.
Okay, well, I think the audience can, you know, tell what you were saying by looking at the meeting notes. Just to move this along, I would like to, I guess, I haven't heard from you, Sally, so let's.
Well, I've not done this aspect of this before, so my question is, do we agree on a scenario, or do we eliminate some of these 13 pieces?
You can agree on a scenario, and you can agree on a scenario saying, you know, taking out this number. I mean, you know, you're giving me some recommendations, some direction to bring back another scenario, or to bring back number 4 with,
Okay.
yeah.
No, I'm very happy with what you did, Maureen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because we have such disparate points of view, I'm wondering if it might be easiest for us to come agreement around what is completely off the table, meaning something that we feel strongly should not be considered, at least for now.
May I suggest before we do that, though, we need to have a target number. We need to have some agreement about what is the target number for reductions. That's what we need first, as we said before. So we need some response. We recommended 800 and...
No, you recommend 982.
No, well, initially,
Oh,
excuse me,
initially,
I'm sorry,
802.
And then
Yeah.
you asked us to come back with the 900.
Yeah.
So we need to know where we're at now at this point.
Well, as far as this, I mean, if we're going to go down the scenario list, I'm generally in favor of scenario 4, or scenario. Is it 4?
Yeah, it's 4.
4.
With the
With,
980,000.
yeah, I think there's probably going to be some adjustment to that. I'm not in favor of scenario 1 or scenario 2. Well, 2 I could, you know, two I could maybe live with, but 1 certainly not, 3 certainly not, and 5 most definitely not. So I don't know if that.
I agree with Andy. I think the 10% of reserves would be really nice to look forward to in 21, 22. I would prefer scenario 2, but I agree. I'll go with the majority if everybody agreed with scenario 4.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
totally agree with what you said.
Just keep in mind that we none of these include any compensation.
Right.
So as soon as 1%'s on the table in scenario 2, we're basically we don't have a certifiable budget at that point.
Yeah, I agree with scenario 4, and then trying to cut about 980,000 for that reason of if we do the 1% increase, then that will bring us down to right around the 800,000 that we need to continue with over a 5% in our reserves.
I don't agree with anything very concretely at this stage because I just I don't have the data-driven analysis that I need to make the decision. We have the cut, we have one sentence, but we don't have an understanding of what the actual consequence to our district would be. What would actually happen on the ground, and where are the cuts that are going to be less consequential in terms of student achievement. We have to remember that student achievement is our number one responsibility. Student achievement is our number one responsibility. And right now, student achievement, it has gone down in the last year, 15 points, with the budget that we passed the year before. So I need to have more information. I feel a responsibility to have more information to make sure that we're connecting the dots around our fiscal priorities and our academic priorities. Right now, our academic priorities do not seem in alignment with our district in terms of it's going down. And right now, our deficit continues to increase. So neither of these feel in alignment, and it would be, I think, irresponsible and premature for me to make any sort of random cut in terms of numbers.
So, okay, thank you. Rogelio, how do you feel about this?
I have read a lot. Everything is on the table right here, and I'm not comfortable actually with the scenarios. I'm not, because I'm afraid that next meeting we're gonna have more scenarios, and actually, just like it was discussed on the budget session last time, numbers are gonna change because the original budget study that we got was the first version, 27 pages. Then, right at the board meeting, minutes before, was handed out, second version, 3 more pages.
So,
More reductions.
so Rogelio, you did ask for more versions, and that's what I provided you tonight. You asked for more options. That's why you have more pages.
Well, at that time, last board meeting, I said, as of today, not right now, but as of that last meeting, I was comfortable with scenario 3.
So is that what you're saying? You're comfortable with number 3?
Can I just add one thing? If we all can agree to number 1, we're already through one of the scenarios. If we can agree on curriculum adoption, one-time expenditure, we're already past. Already scenario number 1 is moot. One of the scenarios is moot. Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
No.
Okay. One of the scenarios is only cutting to 185,000. Correct?
Correct. That's the 3.
So if we can just agree on curriculum adoption, which I think, are we all in agreement that curriculum adoption, which was only done last year, is something that we're not going to need to do again this year? Can we agree on that? So
that's what I heard.
So we're already one of these scenarios is out. Do you see what I'm saying? Does everyone see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
Okay, so
it's not the point.
Excuse me. You could say no, because you could say that a scenario you want to cut 185, and it could be a different combination of 1 through 13.
Okay,
so it's not linear.
Right, but I'm trying to come to some places of agreement, which I think is really helpful to try and see that we're actually in agreement in some basic things.
But I think what would be really helpful here is if we could agree to the level of
yes.
reserve that we are each comfortable with, because that's really what it comes down to, Maureen.
Okay, but
that's the board's responsibility.
That is our responsibility.
That's your responsibility.
I guess I didn't get the piece of homework that said, come tonight to the board meeting with the percentage of reserve you'd like to have. That's not the way my brain operates, and that's that's just not how I negotiate, and it's not how I, you know, we all bought cars before, and we all had to have that conversation with, you know, what do you want your payment to be, and this and that. You know, we have different ways of negotiating that, and I come to it in a very different way, and that's okay. But we are starting from a place of agreement, which is on that $250,000 in curriculum. We do all agree, I think, right? So that's a good. So we're on the same page to begin with. I think that's great. 5 of us agree on something.
Well, that is not what I heard. I heard that 3 board members prefer scenario 4, that Rogelio prefers scenario 3, and that Maureen, you're not willing to commit to a scenario.
I'm not willing. I'm willing. The one thing I am willing to commit to is that I do agree that it's fine to say that we're not going to spend $200,000 on
So
curriculum.
are you comfortable with saying that we should reduce 215 and that's your recommendation?
I'm not willing to make based on the information that I have. I know that's what I know right now is that we do not need to spend as a district $215,000 on curriculum.
So are you agreeing with
adoption.
scenario 3 with an addition of $20,000 to increase that to 215?
How much would the reserves increase by? It's
Fractional,
I know, but
like
let's say,
like a 1/10% or a 100th%.
like,
So
I
you
think more than that.
you have to understand, Rogelio, with scenario 3,
It's
there's no compensation in here for your
but let's say, but adding that, what is it? How much? 200.
Yeah, but that's a one
215,000.
that's a one-time savings. That's not ongoing savings.
That's
So it's only the difference is only.
that's a one
So,
time relief.
this-
because
this is-
actually next year we're gonna find ourselves. Same scenario, just like 2 years ago.
That's the process we have to undergo
So,
every year.
It,
Every year we do this.
Next time, would it be possible to get? I mean, what's your hope for us to give you enough information on tonight? What's your hope for next meeting? What do you need from us, or what are you hoping to get from us tonight in order to create the materials for your next meeting? Because I think we're not going to be able to agree on one scenario that we all agree on tonight. I don't see that happening. But we did just agree
have
on
agreement
something.
Yes, we have
3 of us
agreement.
have agreement
So if we
on
do-
a
you do
scenario. So I think we don't need a motion. We have given direction. Or would you like a motion?
Well, I want to check for understanding.
Yes.
Okay, so I am understanding that the majority of the board is interested in us providing reductions that will total $982,945. Right, and so we'll take this back to the leadership team and see if there's any other areas of reduction that we can add for different choices. But right now, this is what we have.
I kind of want to clarify that
Yes.
I agree that we want to reduce by approximately 980,000, but not necessarily with these options 1 through 11, as
Yes.
scenario 4 is indicating on this piece of paper.
Right, right.
The 980,000, you'll come back with us
Yes.
with further recommendations.
Yeah, with other recommendations.
Yeah.
But we have a target figure.
Yes.
Yes.
A target number. That's really what we need, is a target number, because then we can work with that.
If you have what you feel like you need in terms of a majority and a target figure, would it then be possible then to add a little bit more information about those 11 items? I'm just in order to, if you want to get us closer to the table, I'm just saying that's something that I need, is just a sense of the consequences and the data-driven understanding of how it ties into academic achievement. That's all. But if it's not possible, I understand.
Okay. We'll do our best.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
So I think we have some students that probably want to go home. So we'll take a short break, and then we can sign your papers, and then we'll continue with our meeting.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, we're back in session. We'll move on to item G5, which is the authorization to sign checks on behalf of Carpenter Unified School District. Can I get a motion there?
I'll motion to approve item G5.
A second. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I have a
Any
question.
discussion? Yeah.
Yes. The question I have is that why it took so long to remove Jolene from the checking accounts and add Monica. I mean, because Jolene, I mean, she almost 2 years ago or so, year and a half, that
A year
she
ago.
retired.
About a year ago.
A year ago.
Yeah,
That's
so
the question that I have, the
yeah,
comment.
yeah.
I mean, why did it take so long?
One of the things that we didn't change this because rarely does that happen, only in the event that none of us are in, myself are not here, Nancy's not here. The other action that triggered this is that we are moving all of our accounts. We had the middle school ASB account was at Bank of America. They've closed the branch in Carpinteria. We also have an account at Union Bank that's kind of not in the best interest of our district. So we're moving all of our accounts to Montecito Bank. And this is actually a signature card from Montecito Bank. So it's updating that. And we have to add a couple of additional people, but yes, we're taking Jolene off.
Yeah, because actually she was supposed to be removed immediately.
Well, no, because she wasn't a signer for Montecito anyways.
But she was on the, how many accounts? Two of them?
She wasn't on the board resolution. This is a separate authorization for just the local bank. So your resolution did not include Jolene. She would not have been able to sign. This is a different level.
I know, but the issue is that she was, her name, Jolene's name was still on the accounts. And the question I have is that, why so long? That's all. That's just
Thank
one
you.
comment.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, move on to item G6, first reading of the Carpenter Unified School District Governance Team Protocols 2019. Can I get a motion to approve?
I so move.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion?
Yeah, I don't understand where this came from. This is completely all new material, not generated, as far as I understand it, by the board, and certainly not all 5 of us. I especially don't understand it because we have a whole book, which I bring with me, of bylaws that are specifically directed at our guidance, and these are actual legal binding protocols. Many of them go through all of these same things. So my question is, it just seems like a duplicate document. Where did it come from, and how will it be used?
Sure. So anytime you have a new board, you provide a board workshop, and at that board workshop, you discuss norms and the protocols for how you're going to collaborate and work together. So in April of 2017, you had a workshop with a CSBA representative, and you developed norms and protocols and a Carpinteria governance handbook for last year and up until January of this year. And then this year, with a new board, we met with Terrelyn Finders in January, and at that board workshop, we discussed norms and protocols, and this is the what we agreed to as will be the protocols moving forward in collaboration with the new board.
I actually have I recorded that session because Mr. Delgado was not able to be there, and have no record of any discussion of a concrete document being generated, nor did I at any point have us discuss what we agreed on should be, the 5 bullet points of this X, Y, and Z. In addition, it says, it clearly says here in our bylaws so many of these things in a way that's legally binding. So I don't think this was generated in a way that was particularly conducive to a group dynamic because Roger wasn't there. And second of all, we didn't, at no point in the discussion that we had, did we say, oh, and this is going to, the end result of this is going to be a document of protocols. And did I miss that?
Yes.
Does anyone else?
That's the whole reason why she was there.
Jamie, do you remember there being a document that we were working on producing?
It was recommendations, and I think this is a document that we all need to read, and it's very common sense, and I appreciate it being drafted.
So it was.
I agree
there,
that it's
there
a,
was
as a
a
new
document.
board member. It's very easy to read, and I think it's all things that we need to try to follow.
Have you read the bylaws?
Do you have one of those?
Do you have the book of
The bullet-
bylaws?
Yeah, it's all on this internet thing.
Well, have you read it though? Because it's exactly the same thing, except that this is legally binding, whereas this is just suggestions.
Yes, and all boards have agreed on norms and protocols, and they all have a handbook. That's why CSBA recommends that you work with a facilitator to develop your norms and protocols when you have new board members. So we did it. You've already done it twice as a board. You did it in spring of the 2017, and now we have a new board, so we do it again. And I recommend that we follow the protocols because essentially they are reflecting of how you can put in practice your bylaws.
Great. Okay. No further discussion. All those in favor of the first reading?
So I have a question.
Okay.
If the governance, if these protocols are in direct conflict with our bylaws, we understand that our bylaws are legally binding, whereas this is just sort of like some sort of recommended thing.
Well, you'd want to point that out and bring it up.
Okay, like for instance, voting no or abstaining. There's no place I mean, we should probably just go through these because Mr. Delgado wasn't even there to discuss any of these.
By choice.
Not.
He actually
not
had
by
a previous
choice.
engagement, which he said the very first
Not
time
by
the
choice.
meeting was announced.
It was just.
The meeting was announced.
Actually-
He said he had a conflict, and no change was made. No change was made. No attempt was made. No, and in fact, no attempt was made to check in with us about dates before the date was made. So it was kind of like show up or not.
That's not true.
Well,
That's true for me. Actually, no one checked in with me about the date.
I call for the question.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
nay.
Okay, thank you. Move on to H, board policies. H1 is board policy and administrative regulation 6173, instruction and education for homeless children, second reading. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve board policy and administrative reg 6173, instruction education for homeless children.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, H2, board policy and administrative regulation 5141.31, immunization, second reading.
I move to approve board policy and administrative regulation 514131, immunizations.
Second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, H3, administrative regulation 5141.3, health examination, second reading.
I move to approve administrative regulation 5141.3, health examination, second reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
We're having such great discussions on these policies now that we have no subcommittee. That's my discussion point.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, item H4, board bylaw 9250, remuneration, reimbursement, and other benefits, first reading.
I move to accept board bylaw 9250, remuneration, reimbursement, and other benefits.
I don't think it's
I need a second first.
Second.
It's totally unclear to me from this packet what's actually being recommended as the first reading. Because there's like there's 4 different options presented by CSBA, and then there's our old option with some sort of edit added to it. So it's really unclear to me which one is being recommended by anyone.
So what's being recommended is our current one, BB 9250, board bylaw, with the addition under health and welfare benefits, where it says board members may participate in the health and welfare benefits program provided for district employees. The addition is board members who elect to participate shall pay the full cost of the premiums, and then the next 2 paragraphs are crossed out.
question I have is that then why was it presented the budget discussion?
Sure, I'll read for you why. If you read what was crossed out.
Yes,
it's-
I would read
Let
it.
me read it. The district shall pay the board-determined cost of premiums for board members electing to participate in the district health and welfare benefits programs. The amount of cost of the premiums to be paid by the district shall be determined annually prior to the adoption of the next annual budget. So that's why it was considered in our budget development process.
That whole policy is from it says at the end of the policy when it was adopted. So if you look at this policy, it was adopted in 2005. So we're out of. I do not recommend holding on to this old policy in its current form. I recommend, as we have with every single policy that we've considered, we go to the CSBA sample policy and we work from there. So if we go to the CSBA sample policy, there's options depending on what kind of compensation is being offered. So health and welfare benefits are one possibility. The other possibility is a stipend. Then they get into the weeds of the stipend in terms of, you get a stipend if you show up at a meeting. You don't get a stipend if you don't show up at the meeting. I think it's an interesting discussion. I don't think that we should stick with the policy that we have because it's out of compliance. It's old and it's out of compliance.
Actually, it's not out of compliance, and we did look at what CSBA recommends, and we're not recommending that because your first sentence in your policy says, the governing board views board service as a voluntary contribution to the community and elects not to receive the compensation to which it is entitled by law.
Wait, say that again?
It's the top sentence.
Then that would just be option one for the CSB sample policy. That's just according to CSBA. If we have that, that's all we have. Each member of the governing board sorry, not that one. It just says that it's a voluntary thing and you don't get anything. So that's option number 3. The members of the governing board view their board service as a voluntary and it just ends there. And then to extend some members' benefits if they want to pay for them completely contradicts that. That's, in my mind,
It does not.
it does to me because it's saying, oh, if you have the money to pay into our system, you can, but this really is a voluntary benefit and you should be doing this for free. So that doesn't, it is a benefit, even if you're paying, it is a benefit to get to participate in our health and welfare program. That is a benefit. In some jobs, that is offered as a benefit, even if they're not paying for it. You get benefits, but you have to pay for them. It's still considered a benefit.
So I'd just like to correct something that was said, is that we are not out of compliance, and I think it would be beneficial to discontinue stating things that are not factually based.
Well, what I mean, if you look at this, we are out of compliance because what it shows, and maybe not out of compliance, but we're out of the recommended suggestion for CSBA, which is that they very clearly say, if you say it's voluntary, that's all you offer. You don't go into, well, it's all voluntary, but some of you can get benefits if you want to, X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. They just say option 3, the members of the governing board view their board service as a voluntary contribution to the community and elect not to receive the compensation to which they are entitled pursuant to that. And it's just, according to CSBA, I think it makes sense just to leave it at that because it doesn't allow room for any confusion. It's very, very clear. People are not getting into this for any sort of benefit of any kind. They're doing it purely because they understand it's a voluntary position, and that's that. And if we want to go down that path, that's fine. I might actually recommend, option 2 and saying that a monthly compensation to be decided on an annual basis as the budget allows might be, I think it's a discussion that we could have. Do we want it to be completely free for everyone just because we as a board don't need any kind of monetary benefit from it? Or do we think that, people in the future or for the next round of elections, it might be helpful to get a wider field if we had some sort of, compensation benefit?
So you are in favor of board compensation?
I'm asking you. I asked a question.
I clearly am not in favor of that.
Okay. So none of you are, or I don't know, I didn't hear Sally convey an opinion.
I'm not in favor of this.
Of any benefit?
No.
So I think the safest option then is to stick with 3.
Option 3.
The members of the governing board view their board service as a voluntary contribution to the community and elect not to receive the compensation to which they are entitled pursuant to Education Code 3510.
Okay.
That is the clearest. That is the clearest. That just
Option.
option.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of the board bylaw 9250. All those in favor?
Wait.
Can
I'm
you read it?
not.
Aye.
I'm not at all clear on what we're talking about.
Very clear. It's very clear.
Oh, this is the recommended one. Then why was this one included?
For your information.
So this is the recommended
Yes.
one. Was that clear
Yes,
to
it
you,
was
Roger?
very clear.
Talked about this 10 minutes ago.
Actually, I don't know what to think. I think that
To be clear, this current policy does benefit one of our board members, right?
Benefit all of us. if we
No,
want
no,
to.
no. But it's currently there's only one person on the board participating in this. Is that correct?
How do you know that?
Because they said it at the last budget study session when we brought this all up, right? Is that correct? Just to be clear, why would we have a policy if it's only helping one person, or it's not going to help anyone, or like this is how we have to talk about these things?
Yeah, we voted, so we're good.
I didn't vote.
Okay, all those opposed. Are you opposed to this?
I didn't hear them. Did you guys vote?
no,
We
not
did.
yet.
We all said aye.
Yeah, we all said aye.
Okay, nay.
Nay.
Thank you. Okay. Measure U. We're on to we've done that. Sorry. I2 is a sorry. I2 is a we're being asked to rescind the approval of Frank Skipper Construction Company and award McGillivray Construction Incorporated as leaseback contractor for Catalina Elementary modernization and pre-construction services. Can I get a motion?
I move to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Oh, I'm in favor of rescinding the money.
Okay. Rogelio?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I3 is contract approval with Firma Landscape Architects for the main modular Phase 1 and Canalino Modular Phase 2. Can I get a motion to approve?
I motion to approve I3. Contract approval with Firma Landscape.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm just confused about why the landscape design is being, as far as I know, the bigger pieces of this project have not yet been approved. Is that true? Or has the rest of it been approved and this is just the landscape design piece?
What bigger project? I'm not following the question, sorry.
Well, the landscape design seems to be the smallest problem that's being considered at Main School, rather than the portables.
Well, the design for Main School has already been approved in the facilities master plan. So now this is, they have the plan, so now they're asking us to actually approve the money that's going to be spent to move ahead with the proposals for the landscape.
We're in architectural board of review
Yes.
for Maine currently.
Right.
At the city, and I'm guessing we need to come up with a landscape plan.
Yes.
In order to satisfy some of those requirements.
So the building plans have already been approved.
But none of that's actually in this, like we don't actually know that. We're just guessing on that. It's
No,
not
we know
like-
it.
Okay, so it's at the architectural review board.
Yes,
with
that's
the
what
city.
that's what I reported.
So that's why it's being. I don't understand why that wouldn't have just been included in the. That seems kind of relevant to the background.
Okay. well,
Okay, all right.
So
Go ahead.
so
I mean, just in the future, could Mr. Winiger provide helpful? Because to me, it seems very out of order to like not knowing that it's in review with the architectural review board, having not even approved, as far as I understand, the final plans for the modular buildings. It seems odd. Do you see what I'm saying? But knowing that it's in the architectural review board sort of makes sense.
We don't approve the final plans.
Yeah.
No, not the final plans, but the money that's going into like this. It just seems this seemed very out of order to get it. So understanding that information, it doesn't seem out of order. That's all.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 move on to item I4, contract approval with Elite Modular Leasing and Sales for removal of portable classrooms at the middle school. Can
I
get a-
move to approve the contract approval with Elite Modular Leasing and Sales.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Are these going to be reused or are they being recycled? What's happening with these? They're just being removed?
Those buildings?
Yes.
They were really, really, really bad shape.
But we don't know?
No, we do know. That was in the facilities master plan. All of
Okay,
our
they're
buildings
being
were.
removed? Diana, they're being removed?
Yes, they're being removed.
It doesn't say, okay.
It
If-
says removal of the two.
Right, they're being
existing
removed, but
portable-
are they going to, some of our buildings which are being removed are being moved onto other campuses to be used again?
No, these buildings are unusable.
Okay, maybe if, it would be great if there was just a little bit more information on some of these, especially if Mr. Winiger is not here to explain it. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, item I5, approval of contract with Kruger Benson Zimmer Architects for Design and Engineering Academy at CHS. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the contract with Kruger Benson Zimmer Architects.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so just to be clear, this is for more modular buildings to be used for the Design and Engineering Academy?
No.
Okay. What is this then?
This is to design the engineering academy that's going to be put into the old wood shop.
The old wood shop, okay.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, item I6, approval of change order number 1, modular buildings purchase at Canalino. Change order is in the amount of $2,000. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the change order number 001, modular buildings purchase at Canalino.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just concerned that the Rincon school is being so. I would like it to see it bumped up in terms of. I know that it at the beginning of the Measure U project, it was higher up on the timeline. For some reason, it got moved. I know this is only addressing Canalino, but with every time we make these changes and additions and expenditures for all these other schools, I just keep thinking of the terrible state that those Rincon classrooms were in, and would really like to see those. I would like at least a status check of where we are in the timeline with the Rincon classrooms. So
could I explain that? Because you're familiar with the process, right? How we're moving buildings and things around for Rincon, Maureen?
I would love to have a discussion of it on an agendized item. So maybe that's where we should go. It's just an update on the Rincon project.
Okay. All those in favor of approving this change order?
Aye.
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 Maureen?
Aye. I said aye.
Okay. Item I7, approval of change order number 2, modular classrooms, Canalino. Change order is in the amount of $46,552.42. Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the change order number 002, modular classrooms at Canalino.
Can I get a second? Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion?
I would have liked to have asked Mr. Winiger about the quote-unquote unforeseen conditions, seeing that it's all sort of in like construction language that isn't necessarily. Anyways, it would have been just helpful to understand why we're paying an additional $46,000.
It's on the attachment.
Right, exactly. I just looked through it, but just for the public to have an understanding of, there's lots of different. Anyways, for the public, I'll just be the person that tells you there's a lot of different smaller costs it looks like that have accumulated.
So I'd be happy to try to clarify that for you if you'd like.
I really, I think people can contact me if they want to see this agenda item in the future. I have a feeling most people are probably right, exactly. So they're welcome to look at it.
Okay, great. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Alrighty, move on to item J, and J1 is personnel summary. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve the personnel summary, J1.
Can I get a second?
Second.
I second.
All right. Any discussion?
I just saw that we were hiring a school psychologist consultant. Can you talk to me more about that?
Yes, she's filling in for maternity leave. We could not find someone to hire for the full-time maternity leave. We could only find a part-time consultant.
And the other one is a temporary leave replacement. The other ones
Another
are
maternity
all
leave.
Okay. The others are just all leave. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Board communications. Maureen, do you have
We
anything?
didn't vote on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, board communications. Maureen?
It's been a busy couple of weeks for me. We've had the 100-day at Canalino, which I think I hope all the elementaries got a chance to participate in. For those of you, it's kind of a newer thing. The 100-day, the kids all kind of work on a project where they get to bring in 100 objects and bring them in and sort of have a celebration. At my daughter's school, they created a museum of 100 days in her classroom. And I think it's an interesting time of year because it's sort of halfway through the semester too. So it's kind of halfway through the school year. So I just think it's a great moment to kind of think about what's happened in the school year and kind of think about where you go forward. And it's also for us kind of, the beginning of our budget process, and then, we kind of start to get into it. And, what I heard, I just want to reflect on not the specifics, but the general tone of some public comments. I heard some anger. I heard some frustration. And I also heard some misunderstandings. So I do want to reiterate again that anyone's welcome to contact me at M, as in Maureen, Claffey, my last name, at CUSD.net. It's really much more helpful for me to have, for you guys to outreach with me directly, because honestly, if there's a misunderstanding, we can just nip it in the bud. And I am very, very interested in what people have to say, and what people think and how they're doing in the district. And along those lines, I think that's my general philosophy has always been that I need the help of everyone else and all of you and this board in order to do our job, we are not just one person. There's a reason there's a group of us doing this job. And we were brought here by the community. We represent constituents. We represent, each of us, thousands of people. So we have to be the voice for thousands of people. And of course we're going to disagree. That's healthy and normal. But at the end of the day, the challenge is to come to agreement. How do you get 5 people to agree? It's easy to get 5 people to disagree, right? But and it's easier to get 3 people to agree than it is to get 5 people to agree. But I think, working on doing whatever it takes to get the 5 of us to agree on the things that matter, which are fiscal responsibility, of course, and student achievement, that's what the community wants from us. And I would just say, if people out there are feeling frustrated watching these meetings, I can tell you that the meetings, participating in them, being a member of the meeting is 1,000 times more frustrating. So I think what you're feeling and seeing is a reflection of what we're also, and there's also things happening behind the scenes sometimes that may not be conveyed. So that probably doesn't help anything, but here's to 100 more days of school at least, and many more meetings, of which each one hopefully can get more productive and more fruitful and closer to the goal of student achievement and fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Rogelio?
Yes, first of all, number one, there was a board workshop last month, and I wasn't there. And I have one recommendation, that whenever someone is not there, do not say anything about that person. If that's not good, it's unethical, and we all should know it. It's a school board. However, I'm moving forward. Tonight, it was impossible. I mean, really impossible for me to attend tonight. And however, here I am since 4:30 this afternoon until 9 p.m. Probably all of you will have missed this board meeting. Tonight I missed dinner. Tonight's my 25th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And I did it for the kids and to show you my commitment to this board. And I'm moving forward. Number two, they're gone. But 5 months ago or so, these same Carpenter High School students show up and they demanded, not demanded, but they suggested that they needed more face-to-face instruction, less technology. And keep thinking about that. Maybe there's something right about that. Because technology actually, yes, it can help you. You look at the internet, look at your iPhone, your software, anything. But at the same time, it disconnects you from the teaching stuff, which is what's happening to us with the iPhone. 10 of us could be here at the whatever, and we are there physically, but not mentally. And that was number two. So let's all think about that. More face-to-face instruction and less technology. Number three is that I congratulate every student who will graduate next June. Keep it up. We are all proud of you. Go ahead and get a college education. And if you have a dream, you should go for it. It is my biggest satisfaction to be there every June at the Aliso, at the Rincon, at the Canalino, at the middle school, at the high school, just to give a handshake to every student. And that's my biggest satisfaction. That's why I'm proud to be there. And whoever wants to feel this satisfaction in 2 years, there's going to be two board seats. Go for them. And believe me, just that handshake, it's worth it. And I thank you all.
Thank you.
Do you have anything, Jamie?
Just real quick, on behalf of Summerland, we have a Summerland Citizens Association meeting tomorrow. And I believe Mr. Klaus Linsander, who has been elected to represent Summerland on the DAC, will be there if you have any questions at tomorrow's meeting. That's it.
Great, thank you. Sally?
I would just like to remind parents, Diana knows what I'm going to say, that reading for a half an hour, having your child read to you for a half an hour every night will almost guarantee that they'll get to college. So try that one. And I also want to remind parents and students and anybody else in the community that Carpinteria Education Foundation will be having their 26th Orchard to Ocean Run on March 16th. It's a St. Patrick's Day event, and we hope the community will come and help us raise funds that we turn right around and give back to the schools. So thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Just like to remind everyone the 100th annual Russell Cup's coming up, and I keep harping on that one. A lot of exciting things happening, so stay tuned. Thank you. And I think that's calendar. Our budget meeting next week is canceled. We're going to discuss budget again. I think the second regular meeting.
Why was that
this
canceled?
month. There were some scheduling conflicts.
With who? Because we weren't asked about it. I wasn't asked about it.
No, it was with staff.
With staff.
Oh,
And then we have a budget meeting on the 19th and of March, and again on the 30th of April. Okay. I think we're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.